Tonight, my guest is Doc Severinsen, a man who needs no introduction. He is the pride of Arlington, Oregon. And Doc, thank you and Kathy so much for making this happen and coming on this Zoom chat.
I'm not the pride of Arlington, Oregon.
You're not? Who is?
No, when I left, I was only about 12 years old. They said, oh my God, he's gone at last.
Hey, so, and all of you guys that are signing in, if you'll just do me a favor and mute your volume so Doc and I can talk for a little while, and then later on we might bring some people in. So Doc, a lot of us, I'm just going to go ahead and start firing some questions your way. A lot of us know your beginnings because we've known about you for so long and you've been such a big influence to musicians, especially trumpet players, forever. But I wanted to see if you talk a little bit about your beginnings and your father's influence, because he was your first teacher, and Herbert Clark, if you can mix all those things in.
Sure. My dad was a country dentist, a frontier dentist in Arlington, Oregon, born and came over here from Europe, and he just didn't fit in, and he played violin. He was actually a pretty good violin player. And it was his idea to start me on the violin. And I'll never forget it. He says, well, I got you this little 3/4 violin, and now we're going to have our first lesson. And I said,
oh, Doc, you paused just a little bit. Doc, can you hear me? There.
Fletcher plays in the town band. And he said, well, you can't play the trombone because your arms are not long enough for the slide positions. She said, but you know what? Herb Clark, that works down at the Shell service station, played trumpet in the First World War, and I think he still got that trumpet. So we went down, asked him. He said, yeah, I got it. I'll have it for you tomorrow. And it was a Busher pea shooter number 9, gold plated and engraved, and he wrote the scale out on a brown paper bag, and you put the fingerings down nicely, and a week later I made my first public appearance, and I really haven't stopped playing since then. Gee, that must have been 20 years ago. Hello? Hello?
Sorry, Doc, my audio got muted there. Sorry about that. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
I need a producer. So the guy down the street that gave you the cornet was named Herb Clark, but after you had played a little bit, you met the real Herbert Clark.
Yeah, you know, it worked pretty good. I was 7 when I got it, and when I was 9, the band director and my dad decided I should enter the state trumpet contest, you know, the school sponsored thing. And I didn't know what to expect or didn't much care about it, I thought. And my dad got me a solo called on the old tune, The Secret. And I was 9 years old, and I walked out there, and first time I'd ever seen this many people in one place in my life. My hometown was practically, you know, not there. And so I walked out, I was terrified. And I played it, and I got a huge round of applause afterwards. And I didn't have any idea what I was playing or how it was going. I just thought, let me get out of here. And so when I got off, they said, boy, that went real good. And they said, Herbert L. Clark is the judge, and he wants to talk to you. And I'm thinking, who in the hell is Herbert L. Clark? I was profane even then. And they said, well, he's the greatest current player in the world. I said, oh, yeah, okay. So Herbert L. Clark came out. He was not a tall man, but not real short, but very regal and beautiful posture and all. And he said, well, young man, that was quite a display you put on there. And I said, thank you, sir. And he said, you know what? I think that you and I should get together tonight and have dinner and talk about playing the trumpet. And I said, well, Mr. Clark, I can't do that. I'm going to the movies. So really, I said, yeah, we haven't got a movie in my hometown. So Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is at the theater down here and I want to see it. And he says, well, I can understand that that would have to come first. And he couldn't have been more gracious. And my dad told me afterwards, he said, that's the first time I ever wanted to kill you. And I couldn't understand, well, what's the bad about that? At least I told him what I wanted to do. And he stayed in touch. He would write me letters once in a while, and I guess I must have written something back.
Do you still have those letters?
No, I don't even have the judge. It's someplace in my belongings, but I have the judge's sheet. Now, I was 9 years old, and the next oldest person in the junior division would have been 14, but because there was not all that many, they just put the juniors and the seniors in together, and I still won. And he said, well, young man, that is quite a performance. And I remember he wrote on the judge's sheet, such a big tone from such a little man.
Wow.
And I got that someplace, and he was so nice, and he would occasionally drop me a line. I hope you're practicing. And if you ever want to come down to Long Beach and play in our band down here, or just come down and visit with us, we'd love to have you. That's the kind of guy he was.
Wow.
And I'm amazed, that I have to explain to a room full of trumpet players who Herbert L. Clark is, who he was. I mean, there was Arbin. Everybody has to know Arbin, the Arbin book. And after that comes Herbert L. Clark. And then a whole lot of other trumpet players.
Right. When did you first get a Clark book, a technical studies book?
I have no idea.
But it wasn't
But
back
I
then.
remember, oh, no, I can tell you when I went to study with Benny Baker, first thing he said, well, get the Herbert L. Clark technical studies, the finger busters. And he said, you're going to be doing a lot of that. And boy, he wasn't kidding. And I don't remember whether I told Benny that I had met him or not, but it was nice to have the Herbert L. Clark books.
Yeah.
It really came in handy. And when I went to Benny Baker to take my first lessons, he started me right off with the chromatic studies, and boy, we put a lot of time in on that Herbert L. Clark book.
And you still play out of it every day, I'm sure.
I do some, yeah, I actually do.
Yeah. I think so many of us use that book all the time, And when we get to talking about New York, I've got a lot of questions about Benny Baker because that seems to be the one thing that people want to ask about the most, actually, is Benny
Well,
Baker.
I can tell them a lot. It was a big thing in my life to have met Benny Baker when I did. I
Well,
mean, I'll never forget the date. My dad was visiting from Portland, Oregon, and he went with me to take my lesson with Benny. He just wanted to meet him. And when the lesson was over, my dad looked Benny in the eye and he said, "Well, Benny, he's your boy now. He's not my boy anymore. He's yours." And boy, oh boy, that shook me up.
well, and that was a little bit later, like in when you moved to New York in 1949, right?
I
But
don't know.
but that, can you talk a little? Well, since we're talking about Benny Baker, can you talk more about he had you on Clark? I'm sure he was working with Arbin. Were there specific things that you remember about that he had you working on, certain solos
Well,
or exercises?
the first day I went in there, he says, "Okay, let's see." Now, here he had the Arbin book there, his Arbin book, and he said, "Take this characteristic number one." I'm, you're going to make mistakes and all that, but don't worry about it. I just want to see where you are and what we should be doing. So I played it, and I don't know. Then we that was my start, and he got a fix on what he thought I needed to do, which was everything. And I I studied with him for years, and I remember I would have he'd say, "Okay, next week here's the day I can find for you right here," and I would go home and cancel 2 or 3 record dates
Wow.
to be able to go that day.
Yeah.
That's and he took my father seriously. He became like my other father.
Wow. What?
I'm you know, he would tell me, uh, "Don't get to be with the dry humor." He said, "You're working with all these guys, and they give you the dry humor, and then it goes into something, and it becomes more acidic." He said, "Don't do that. You don't have to be like them. Just don't do that." And he gave me a lot more than music lessons.
Yeah. And and was he around? Was he around long enough to see you in your career on television?
Not too much, no.
Not too much. Not too much.
Some he did some, but he never called up and said, "Hey, I heard you on the such and such," or something like that. He gave me my lessons, and he gave me advice on how to behave in public, and that was it.
Now, for people out there that don't know, Benny Baker was the principal trumpet in the NBC Symphony before Harry Glantz.
That's right. He was the very first trumpet player, and at Toscanini's request.
Yeah.
You know, he had to audition for Toscanini, but before that, Benny had played with various well-known symphonies. Um, I can't think of the name of them right now, but with some really hotshot conductors and all of that. And Arturo Toscanini was a tough guy. And he would, I have to use an Italian accent to make this right. He'd stop the orchestra. He said, "What's wrong with you string players? You don't know how to play this thing. Benny, come on down here. I want you to play this for these guys." So he come down to play the violin part. He says, "Yeah, man, that's it. Look, I have to have the trumpet player show you how to play it." And Benny was a remarkable um, classical musician. Boy, I mean, he was something else.
And he was a Schlossberg student. Am I right about that?
I think so.
Okay. Is that something he brought up ever, or just
No,
no? But an amazing player. And there's a recording on YouTube of him playing the Brandenburg early on.
yeah, that's not one of the best examples of his playing, and I'll tell you why. He's playing the Brandenburg, and he didn't even have a piccolo trumpet.
Yeah.
So he had noticed these little trumpets in the windows of some places where you go to hawk things, and they sell everything from shotguns to whatever. And he went in and picked up one. It looked like it, and it was pitched in B flat, but they cost like $25. You know, it had a horrible mouthpiece. It wasn't even something you could take out of the horn and put a better one in. And that's what he played the Bach Brandenburg on. And it caused him no end of troubles in the long run, but you could hear in that recording, if you're fortunate enough to hear, how the rest of the group that's playing it with them, uh, they were all on the same page with the style,
Yeah.
and that was Benny. I mean, you know, he had a lot of big time people came to him. I'm not including myself in that. Benny Goodman came to him for lessons.
Really?
Yeah, people that didn't even play trumpet, but played another instrument would come there.
You know, one person that came there was Dominic Spera.
What's that?
You remember Dominic Spera?
Yeah.
And Dominic, I talked to him the other day, and he was taking lessons with Benny the same time you were.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And he said
Oh,
his lesson,
yes, I had heard that. That's true.
well, and what he said to me was that his lesson was after you, and that Baker said, you know, if you would practice as much as the Severinsen kids, you might do something. And Dominic said, well, maybe we need to move my lesson time. So it wouldn't be right after you. That's amazing. And I know he was such an important person because every interview I've ever seen or heard, you've always talked about him and what a big influence he was, you know. Um, and I'm sure you still think
Well, let me tell you this. Benny Baker and my father neither one of them ever gave me a trumpet lesson. It was a violin lesson on the trumpet. Neither my father or Benny ever talked in terms of the fingering. It was the blowing, and all our comments musically were as though I was playing a violin. And that's the way I thought about it. And it came in handy later on.
did he do anything like making you sing or solfege or anything like that at that time?
No,
But just mostly violin works though.
yeah.
They work with it. Incredible. And I know we might come back to him a little bit as things go on, because I also want to talk to people. Have you talked to people about your early career with the Ted Fiorino band, still playing in high school?
Well, you got the pronunciation wrong.
Oh,
It's
good.
Ted Fiorito.
Fiorito, sorry, I put a different end on that. And
Ted Fiorito.
now that band, was it? I mean, the videos I've seen of it, it's not. It wasn't really a big band per se, was it? It was more.
Yes, it was. Let me tell you how that all went. Um, Before the real big band era hit, he had a band, as like they call them, society bands or hotel bands,
Mhm.
and he was a a very decent piano player and a pretty good musician, and he wrote some hit songs, and uh, he was quite a character. But then you know he became the real deal. I'll tell you right now, he knew what he was doing.
Right. In terms of being like an entertainer and a musician, the whole package, you mean, is like that.
Well, yeah, he had an incredible lineup of people that played with him, not myself included, but people who went, Betty Grable, Dorothy Lamour, and some famous boy singers that became famous actors.
And how did you wind up getting in that band being in high school?
Well, I was in high school in Arlington, Oregon, and 150 miles away, Portland had a place called Jansen Beach that had big bands all the time. He came through there, and I think it was uh, maybe kind of like the start of the war and the Second World War, and uh, guys were getting drafted right and left. So he asked if I would come down to Portland and play a little something for him. I played 3 notes. He said, "You're hired." And I was still in high school. So I went back and told my principal, I said, "I need to get your permission to do this." He said, "All right, but the only thing you haven't finished is social studies. I want you to outline the whole book, and then I want you to write your senior thesis and send it in to me." And I did that. And his name was A. Odin Hawes. And he said, "You really need to go and do this. This will be a big break for you."
Wow.
And he was wonderful about it.
Wow. That's kind of an inconceivable thing to happen today, that what happened with you in that band. And and also around this time you met Tommy Dorsey too early on.
I met Tommy when I think I was 14, and he came through Jansen's Beach with his big band, and the war had just started. And I got a call from some guys in Portland. They said, "Hey, Tommy Dorsey guys are getting drafted out of his band right and left, and he really needs a trumpet player. Um, and you should come down and audition for him." Well, they went back and told Tommy, "Hey, we got this kid from Eastern Oregon to come down here and play for you. We think you might be able to use him." I get there, walk into his dressing room at the Paramount Theater. I was 14 years old, had my cornet in my cornet case, and he kind of laughed because he was expecting a grown man. And I sure wasn't that. And he says, "Well, come on in anyway. Sit down." So, "What you got in that case there?" I said, "Well, Mr. Dorsey, I got my cornet." And he said, "Can I take a look at it?" I said, "Well, you sure can." And he opens it up, takes it out. He says, "Is it okay if I play it?" I said, "Yeah." I didn't know he could play cornet. He went into a Herbert L. Clark cornet solo, played the whole thing from the beginning to the end, didn't miss a note. And I'm sitting there thinking, holy God, he's not even a trumpet player and he could do that. But he started on the trumpet with his dad.
Incredible.
And he laughed and said, "You know what? I think you need to go back and finish your school. That's a very important thing. And maybe someday in the future we'll meet again and you come work for me. So you go back to school and practice a lot, study hard, and we'll see if we ever meet up again." And I'll never forget the first night that I played in his band. Whew, we were in the Hotel Shamrock in Houston, Texas, which is like the hottest big new hotel in the world. And Tommy didn't play for the dancing. Uh, he would come in after they had been dancing a while, and then he'd pick up his trombone, play his theme song, and we'd play a show for a couple of hours. And I remember he walked in and he didn't acknowledge me, or I don't think he probably forgotten I'd been hired. Picked up his trombone and he started his theme song. And I broke into tears and I wasn't able to play the first 2 or 3 tunes. I couldn't believe that where I was. And, I was just totally overcome.
Wow. Was Ziggy Elman in the band with you at that time?
No, not. I met Ziggy when I was 14 and went to see the band in Portland, Oregon. And Ziggy, oh man, he was so nice to me. And he said, "How old are you? What are you doing?" Back and forth. And he said, "Listen, you got to practice. You got to practice a lot." And he said, "You know what? It's important to learn how to do a lot of different things in life. Be able so that you can always earn a living." That seemed to be Ziggy's big thing. And the trumpet may not be it. So, study a lot of other stuff besides practicing. And he was so nice. And I got to see him play with Tommy other times. Like when I was in the Army, I went to a Tommy Dorsey concert and Ziggy was in the band and Charlie Shavers was in the band. And wow. Whew.
Now, was Charlie Shavers in the band with you when you were with Dorsey?
Yes. Yeah. I learned a lot from that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, every time I sat down in the section to play, it was another lesson. He's sitting over here. I'm sitting in the chair next to the drums, and Tommy Dorsey standing. I could reach out and touch him when he played. And to sit there for a couple of years and see that guy play night after night after night and never missed a note or played anything that wasn't musical.
Yeah.
And I just figured, well, if I want to get anywhere in this business, I think I better, when I'm through with this band, I'm going to go to New York and I'm going to find a good teacher and I'm going to study.
But now, in between the Ted Fiorito band orchestra and Tommy Dorsey, you also played with the Charlie Barnett band.
Yes.
And
that was a huge experience. And it not just because of the music, although musically, the band was a right-on copy of the Duke Ellington band. We had some of Duke's actual charts because he knew that Charlie loved his band. So he sent him over some of his charts. And the band was styled after Duke Ellington, and I learned more about playing on a big band between Charlie Barnett and Tommy Dorsey. I pretty much covered everything.
And in the Barnett band, Clark Terry was in the trumpet section with you. Is that correct?
Yeah, he joined the band about a week before me, and then he joined them down in LA, and they did a line of jobs up the coast, and I auditioned in Portland, and I think they said, "Go home and pack your bag and be prepared to stay for a long time."
Wow.
And when I'll never forget, when I first heard Clark play, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I mean, his technique was, oh, he could do so many things, and yet he was a showman and a wonderful musician. He played gorgeous ballads, and uh, he was my hero.
Yeah.
Clark was, I wanted to be just like Clark.
Did you guys practice together or talk about things a lot playing wise or?
Oh, sure. Not so much playing. I just copied everything he did. He would play a solo, and then later on, I might have a little 8-bar solo or something, and I'd be playing an exact copy of Clark Terry because I'm pretty good at imitating people, and and it used to give him a laugh. He was really sweet about that. Um, and he knew I was going to school on everything he played.
Yeah. Wow. And you guys stayed very close for years because, of course, we saw him
Yeah,
later on the Tonight
yeah,
Show, and
yeah.
and um, and around the same time. I mean, maybe a little later. And then you had the after you went to Barnett, went to Tommy Dorsey, and you were with Benny Goodman for just a little bit, right?
No, I was um, freelancing in New York, and Jaime Schertzer used to do a lot of his contracting. His first alto player, who was a marvelous player, and he had hired me for a lot of record dates and things. So he hired me to come whenever he needed a trumpet with Benny, and it got to be more and more often. But we just worked out of New York and did a lot of recordings and I don't know, a couple of television things. But it uh, it was it was quite a lesson.
Wow. I mean, and you must and you're the people you were listening to. I mean, I meant to mention this earlier. I mean, I know that Harry James was probably your first idol. Can you talk a little bit about listening to him and
I'm not sure who my first title was, but of course, at the time when I started playing the trumpet, Harry was just coming up, and he would hear him on the radio all the time. First with the Benny Goodman band, and then soon after that, he started his own band, and he had his own radio show 2 or 3 nights a week. Uh, and it was Harry James, Harry James, Harry James. And my dad was a classical musician, and he heard me, of course, trying to play like Harry James. And I remember one day he was filling some guy's tooth and he got so upset, he put the forceps down until the guy said, "I'll be right back." He came storming in where I was playing, grabbed the horn out of my hands, and he said, "Don't play like that. That's cheap stuff." and I thought it was pretty wonderful myself. And I never did tell that story to Harry, but I got to know Harry really well.
yeah. I think people who are younger that don't really know who Harry James was should really, really check him out because not only was a great trumpet player, he was a real showman, right? I mean, movies and
Yeah.
television and all those kinds of things.
Well, he came from a circus family,
Right.
and his dad was the band leader of the circus. And then when he became like the head of the circus, his dad, uh, Harry filled in as the band leader in the circus band. And uh, so Harry knew every showbiz trick in the book.
Wow.
And I've heard a lot of people put Harry down because he had a certain style that, Harry was a smart guy. And he said, there's a lot of great trumpet players out there. And I'm just going to be another really good trumpet player who gets lost in the shuffle here if I don't come up with something. So that's when he developed his style.
Yeah.
And but Harry was first and foremost a master of the trumpet, having played in the circus band, and he got to be a really good jazz player there in Texas. Spent a lot of time around San Antonio and Dallas and places playing in clubs. Harry, I'm gonna tell you, to hear him play solos without the big band uh, was really something.
Yeah.
You know, he knew how to present the big band, but boy, I'm going to tell you, that cat could play that trumpet.
Did he talk to you about what he practiced or anything? Did you guys get into those kind of conversations? Because it seems like his fundamentals were incredible, his flexibility and his upper register. And
Well, um, you know, Harry was a very tall, gangly, very loose, very athletic guy. And part of what he did in the circus when he was just a little kid, he was a high flyer on the trapeze. And boy, you don't want to make a mistake there. Um, but he he approached the trumpet the same way. His father had him practicing out of the right books when he was a little kid.
wow. And I wonder, it was his father, the trumpet player, and he was in the circus.
No, he played all the instruments, but I imagine he played trumpet too.
Okay.
But because of Harry's style and the huge popularity that he had playing his particular style, a lot of people had no idea what a great trumpet player he was. I mean, he could take Carnival of Venice and solos like that, play them backwards and forwards, and it was, whew, he could play. He
Yeah.
could play.
Well, and there were a couple of other guys I wanted to ask you about and just kind of get your thoughts on them because I know you've talked about them or I've seen you mention them in either album covers or interviews. Obviously, Dizzy Gillespie, I've seen him on the Tonight Show with you. You knew him pretty well. I know he's a
Yeah.
admired by
I'll
you.
never forget the first time I heard Dizzy Gillespie. I had just been drafted in the Army, and I was in, after you get, you know, they get you humiliated and put in a uniform, and you realize that you're there to stay for a while. You go to basic training. And if you have any energy left at the end of the day, they had a wind up Victrola with records by Harry James and or Dizzy Gillespie, and I had never heard of Dizzy Gillespie. And then they had his first big hit record. I can't remember what it was, but also Night in Tunisia and some of those things. And I was captivated totally. And I listened and listened and listened, and I went and tried to play. And all the guys in the band looked around and said, "What in the hell has gone wrong with you? What are you trying to play?" And I explained, they said, "Well, don't listen to him anymore." And I said, "No, that's exactly what I want to do." And Diz, he one of those guys that when you meet him and you see what a sweetheart of a person he is, it makes you feel so good to think anybody who's that important and that great can be a lovely person too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you had him on the Tonight Show a couple times.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then also a name not as many people might know is Billy Butterfield.
Yeah. Uh, Billy uh, played in the Bob Crosby band, and he uh, played dates a lot around New York and in different bands, had his own band for a while. And because uh, he played with the Bob Crosby band, uh, he knew the bass player.
Yeah,
You know who I mean, don't you?
I don't.
Well, I had a little slip in the memory there, but I got to meet Billy through him, and it was every time I worked with Billy, I stole everything but his horn. I I loved the way he played. I just loved the way he played a trumpet. And of course, I think he wrote the trumpet solo on Stardust of the Artie Shaw recording. That was Billy. And boy, there's a lot of trumpet players got to start listening to that.
And that probably influenced the way you play that tune as well, I would think.
Well, I don't know. I do the best I can, I guess.
Another name I've seen you mention before, and I was curious if you guys met, was Clifford Brown.
Oh, let me think now. Well, first of all, like any other trumpet player, I had my ear cocked to everything that he did,
Hmm.
and I realized that he was the trumpet player of the day, and for a long time after that. And I probably sold more licks from him than I did anybody else. But um, yeah, he was absolutely brilliant trumpet player and great musician.
Now, did you ever meet him or get to hear him in person?
Yeah, I think I heard Clifford Brown one of the first gigs he ever did. It was in St. Louis, um, and he was playing in a club, and uh, I got to hear him on the first night, and oh man, I was blown away right then and there.
Wow. Yeah, his all of the
And his wife made the comment that after breakfast he went out to the garage, he took that trumpet and he practiced one tune all day long. Every set of changes that he could put to it, inside out and backwards. And when he found something he liked, he would play it over and over and developed his style. And I guess uh, what I'm saying is his style was himself. He copied himself, and he was one of the all-time greats.
yeah. Wow. That's incredible that you saw him play and things. And what a so sad that his life was not longer, of course. But
Yeah.
those recordings are timeless for sure. And as we're talking, anybody else that comes to mind, of course, I want you to bring them up as we go through this. But then I want to kind of talk a little bit more about when you moved to New York. And of course, we touched on Benny Baker a little bit. Um, can you talk about how
Well,
you?
I just want to tell you,
Please.
if it hadn't been for Benny Baker, I never would have been a trumpet player. I would have. He was my raison d'etre. Uh, I mean, I could play pretty good before I got there, but he just galvanized me in, and bam, uh,
Do you remember?
he was a powerful teacher.
Do you remember the things? Were there moments in studying with him where you were like, okay, this is the next thing, or this is the next thing? Was there a moment where you thought, oh, I understand this, or this is what he's working on, or this is a weakness and how he's addressing it? Do you remember any of that kind of stuff?
There wasn't a lot of talk other than advice on how to do this, that, or the other thing. And sometimes we'd play duets together. And this was after he had had some severe damage to his lip. And I talked to guys that had known him, and they said, "Well, you should have heard him then." And I never said it, but my reply should have been, "Well, you should hear him now." You know, if he did the Bell Telephone Hour Symphony Orchestra, he played third trumpet because he'd had damage to his lip, and he didn't want that pressure. But he liked hanging out with the guys, and he played third trumpet. If you want to hear that orchestra play, it sounded like the whole symphony orchestra coalesced around the third trumpet. You could hear that third trumpet come right out of the mix, bam, coming right at you, and the whole band orchestra playing like that. And I got to hear him play. We used to play duets together, and people thought he had lost his lip. Benny thought so too. But I want to tell you right now, he didn't lose anything. He had the most incredible sound. I got to tell you about this day. It was a summer's day in New York, and he was teaching at Henry Adler's music store upstairs, front studio. Hello?
Oh, we just had somebody come in as watching. Somebody named Vince DiMartino just came in to say he's watching you.
Uh-oh.
But hey, Vince, I'm going to mute you for just a minute. We'll come back to you in a little bit. There we
Well,
go.
I couldn't see who it was, but anyway, I forgot where I was now.
You were talking about Adler's Music Store with Benny Baker.
Oh, yeah. Summer's day, I hear the sound of a trumpet. It was in this steel canyon, and it must have echoed 4 or 5 times up and down the street. And I heard that trumpet playing, and I said, "Holy shit, who is that playing that trumpet?" And I walked upstairs, and Benny had been playing some etudes because he was wanting to get his lip up for something he had to do. But I had never heard him play like that. And he could still get a sound. I don't care. You can talk Bacchiano, you can talk all of the big time symphonic first trumpet players or third players or whatever. And I don't care what period you want to talk about. Benny Baker had a sound like no other person. It was absolutely spellbinding. And yet he could sit inside of a dance band and play, he'd play a second or third part, something like that, and just fit right in. But then you put him out there on the stage with the NBC Symphony Orchestra, some really noteworthy trumpet challenge. And it was unbelievable, really was.
How did he structure lessons with you? Do you remember that? Did you guys, how did he structure the lessons? Did you play back and forth, or did he just want to hear you play music?
I don't think he took his horn out of the case for quite a while. And one day he says, "Oh, well, you're doing fine. Listen, I've got to play a date later on, and I haven't had touched the horn lately. Let's play some duets. I want to work my lip up a little bit." So it got to be when he had a gig to play, we'd play duets back and forth, switch the parts. And that was as valuable as the rest of the lessons, because all you had to do was just take it in.
Yeah.
It was there for you.
Now, do you remember what kind of duets you guys would play?
No, just St. Jacomb's and Arbans. That's all we had.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's It's incredible. Was he because he was an orchestral player, were you working on transposition and things like that too? Or
Oh,
was,
yeah.
yeah.
And you
Uh,
want to know how I did that? By by I didn't learn to change clefs or anything like that. I transposed. If it was the E trumpet, it was or E flat. I was a fourth higher,
just the
you
interval
know, like
transposition.
that. And of course, what a lot of people don't realize that in those days, um, the first trumpet players in all of the symphony orchestras, probably except Boston, played B flat horns.
Right.
They played B flat Bessons, and in Boston, they were really a French orchestra, and they played all C trumpets, and well, these are little known facts, and I don't charge extra for that.
No, I appreciate that. And so while we're talking about just basic trumpet playing, and some things I've always been curious about, uh, what because you were working so much in New York at this time. I mean, by the time you were studying with Baker, you were very busy freelancing.
Yeah,
What time did you start playing during the day? What time during the day did you start playing?
I don't know. It varied because I lived in apartments for a while, and I I um, I had a wife and two two little girls, and then a son after that, and I had a house full of kids, and I couldn't just play whenever I wanted to. My wife was she had problems, so I wound up being the father and the mother and the cook and the whole 9 yards, and I was just able to practice when I could.
Yeah, yeah.
Want to hear an interesting story?
Oh, of course.
I was living in Jackson Heights at I forgot the name of the place. It was a famous because a lot of musicians lived there. Bobby Hackett lived there, and Johnny Falstitch, and a whole lot of people. Um, and I, I was able to get in there and get an apartment and practice a little bit. One day I'm practicing, there's a knock on the door, and the guy said, "Hello, I'm from the sheriff's office." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you have a trumpet?" I said, "Yeah, right here." He said, "Well, I have to take it from you. Um, that was given to you at one point to use by the Kahn company. It was the
Yeah.
whatever that model was, and it was the only horn I had." I said, "Well, this is how I make my living. It's the only horn again." So, "Well, you haven't paid a cent on it." I said, "No." And they've been using my picture and advertising that I play that horn, and they want it back. And he said, "I'm sorry, I hear what you're saying, but I have to take it." He went off with it. And the next day I had a lesson with Benny, and I said, "Benny, I don't have a trumpet." And I told him what had happened. He said, "No, let me see what I can do." He went over in his closet, and I hear stuff being moved around. He comes out with a Besson fabrication, and says, "It's the only thing I could find here. Take it." And I said, "Take it?" He said, "Yeah, I don't use it. You just keep it." And I had that horn for a long, long time. I don't know whatever happened to it, but
I guess
that's
I'm just
when I started playing Bessons, and Benny had that horn, and he said, "I'll just take it. Hell, I don't need it."
I guess I can't believe the cops came to your door wanting that con trumpet back.
I couldn't believe it either. And he was not a joker. He was not very, he had no humor.
Oh my gosh. Well,
So,
yeah. So another question a lot of people probably have is because you're famous for practicing in stairwells. When did you
yeah,
start doing that?
I don't know. It just kind of grew on me. When you're doing the bulk of your playing and you're not in your own home or in any certain place, you kind of warm up wherever you can. And then pretty soon you start thinking about, geez, I got to find a place to practice.
Yeah.
And I always found that I got better results practicing in stairwells that didn't have any dampening on the walls, all steel and cement. And if there were 6 stories, I tried to get in the middle, so I got the whole thing going. And to this day, I understand they call me the king of the stairwells. I've been kicked out of more stairwells.
But that's obviously was good for your playing because you didn't kind of tighten up and back up because you were able to play freely.
Well, yes, and I've never understood why. It's just the idea. Well, the trumpet is so loud, we have to put it in a room where it's dead. That's the worst thing you can do for a trumpet player.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
That's all right. Well, and then speaking of some things you would practice, I've seen video where you talked about using the stamp method a bit. Is that something you still do?
I think so.
When did you start working with stamp or using that method at least?
Well, I think it was when was I was playing with the Minnesota Orchestra enough that I heard about Jimmy Stamp and that he'd written this book, and I got a copy of it, I think, at the music store there, and realized, wow, this is good stuff. And I found a lot of nice players that also used those books.
Yeah. Are there any other warm-ups or people's materials that you kind of found yourself going through over the years that you'd want to mention?
Well, I'm a kind of warm-up nut because I'm trying to establish the sound that I want to get. And so I find a place that has acoustics that I like, that kind of gives me a little help where I can hear what I'm doing. And I've always, after a certain point, when I started with Benny and wasn't playing, I was playing all kinds of music, but now I was getting involved in classical dates, and I wanted to play as much like a classical player as possible. And I'd started with the classical cornet solos and trumpet solos until I went on the road with the big bands. And then, so I worked my way back into that. And I listened to a lot of symphony orchestras. And, it's an interesting thing. Benny Baker taught everything in terms of violin and voice. And when he was did I tell you the story about him with Toscanini? Toscanini would have him down and play it on the trumpet.
Right.
And Benny, the main thing I got out of my studies with him, my embouchure was already fairly secure and everything, was it was more music lessons. And the same with my father. They both taught violin and voice. And so I I practiced a lot of excerpts and things that, as it turns out, I didn't need them all that much. But when I started conducting pops orchestras, I was told, no, you can't just play pops music. You got to do some classical stuff. That was I started loading up on playing, on listening to classical music, and all of the voice lessons and violin lessons that I got from my father and Benny Baker came in really, really handy. I actually, I don't think I've ever had just a trumpet lesson.
Wow.
No, I've never been with a teacher who said, we're going to get you to play that trumpet, and far from it.
Well, what singers and violinists did you listen to just for your own ears?
Well, I just kept my ears open to, like Heifetz and people like that,
Yeah.
and all of the string instruments. Whenever I listened to a lot of classical radio, and I would get the music to some of the things they were doing. And then when I started being a pops director with, you're hanging out with some heavyweight musicians there. And I was instructed, you can't just do pops music, you got to do classical too.
Right.
And I would find recordings by different orchestras, and then I figured out, well, why don't I just get stuff that I've heard Bud and Tom Stevens and guys like that play, and I owed them all a lot of money for lessons. I'll tell you that.
I know you were really good friends with Stevens and Herseth, and
Yeah.
Can you talk about those relationships a little bit? I mean, what things you guys would talk about, if it was trumpet talk or other things?
Well, Stevens lived around the corner from me in the Hollywood Hills, and so I'd go to hear him play, and same with I had all kinds of classical records of him, Stevens, Bud, and the guy in New York,
Bacchiano.
Phil Smith, and
Phil Smith.
Bacchiano before him. And I would study the way they played the solos. Now I get the orchestra parts and learn to play them.
Wow, I don't think people would knew that, how much you studied the classical music or the classical trumpet playing as much. But that's
yeah.
Yeah. But
I put a lot of time in on that, and plus my father and Benny Baker, they never gave me one single trumpet lesson ever. It was always violin or voice, never trumpet. I think Benny said many times, if you want to know how to play something, don't ask the trumpet players. Go to the violin players and the vocalists. that's where you'll learn how to phrase.
Yeah, absolutely. Were there, do you remember any favorite singers you had? Because I know, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but you recorded all those opera arias with the Cincinnati Pops, and it sounds so much like a singer. And I wonder what sounds you had in your head while you were
I had, oh, I wish I'd known you were going to ask me that question.
like a UC Bjorling or people like that.
That would have been my number one guy, UC Bjorling. And then who was the next tenor that came along? Was not a showy. He played just like a trumpet.
Not a Wunderlich.
No,
I'll think about it later.
but I had my favorites like the Bud, and I listened a lot more to classical music than I did anything else.
Yeah.
Because frankly, that's what I needed to know the most about.
Well,
and go ahead.
oh no, go ahead. I was gonna say, yeah, obviously that helps with all the conducting that you later did, and having played with you a couple times, I knew you knew what you were doing. I think before we got on, I was showing a picture, and I just want to let people see this. Oh, I don't have it up anymore. You let me borrow one of your jackets in a concert about 20 years ago. And
yes, and you never gave it back.
And so, another trumpet player or two guys I wanted to mention in New York that you worked with a lot would be probably Ray Crisara.
I got many a trumpet lesson from Ray, what he was playing first trumpet, and I was playing second or third or fourth.
Yeah.
And boy, I learned a lot of trumpet from Ray and never sat down in his studio. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Bless you.
What kind of things did you notice with Ray's playing that really stuck with you?
Well, I will say this. I worked with Ray for 20, 25 years, whatever it was. And I never heard him miss a note. But by the same token, he could play beautiful melodic passages, and he had all the technique you need for any of the rest of it. And I always felt like I was getting a free trumpet lesson when I worked with him. I'll never forget this. I'm glad you brought this up because I went to Columbia 30th Street, and there was three trumpets. It was a classical thing. Ray Crisara and myself and Bernie Glow.
That was the next person I was going to ask you about.
Well, it was a kind of a thing where we were playing lots and lots of pieces. Totally classical, but anyway, we had 3 dates in one day, just all day long. Like that, like that kind of stuff.
Right.
That gets exposed. And so Ray would play first on one piece, then Bernie would play first on the next piece, and then I would play first on the next piece. And Bernie and I had been up to the Bach factory, and we both got brand new Bach trumpets. And it just really gave us both a lot of help with our playing. It was remarkable. And Ray came in and he had his old Besson. about the second or third session, Ray pulls his horn down, puts it in his lap, and says, "God damn it, I'm going to have to go and buy one of those Bachs. I haven't been able to catch up with you guys all day. You're wearing me out." and the next day he went to the Bach factory and got a Bach.
And Vincent, and that was when they were in the Bronx, is that right?
Yeah.
So Mr. Bach would have been there. And
Yeah.
do you remember much about him?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I walked in there one time. Well, I don't know if you have time for all this, but I'll tell
You got
you.
as much time as you want.
I walk in and the old man comes out of the office. "Yeah, how could I help you?" And I'm thinking, well, get rid of that lousy accent would be one thing. and he says, can I help you? And I said, yes, I have one of your 7B mouthpieces, and I liked it so much I had it gold plated, and I'm doing fine with it. But I'm trying to play all kinds of commercial dates with it, and it's just a little more than I can handle. Could you help me to fix it so I can get better high notes? And he said, yeah, let me see that thing. And he said, you need a shallower mouthpiece. I said, yeah. He says, okay. And he takes it, and somebody had said, don't let him take your mouthpiece in his hand. So he goes back into the office, or the shop, and he sliced the rim off of it. It was a 7B, and ground down the bottom and the rim a little bit, put it back together, and it was it became all of a sudden like a 5C rim. And it was like a totally different mouthpiece. He says, yeah, this is good. I like this for you. This is good. And he says, I noticed when you play, well, I see this with a lot of guys that come in here, when you put the lips on your mouthpiece on your lips, and you play, the lips kind of go over the outside and grip it like that. And he said, that kind of is not good seeing for you. He says, let me fix that. And he just cut it down, made like an old-fashioned trumpet, that was, all of a sudden I had this little thin rim, and you had to really get a hold of that sucker. And it was the best thing he could ever have done for me.
Really?
And yeah, right. And I had to learn to play it, though, and when he says, I see your lips go over there, I fixed that for you. And he comes back and it's a skeletonized mouthpiece. And he says, yeah, this is better for you. And I said, well, you ought to know. And that was it. And I still have that mouthpiece, and everything I play is kind of copied after that.
I was going to ask if you still had that.
Well, I have that and every other mouthpiece I ever bought.
What and then so let's switch the topic a little bit.
And some that I stole.
Yeah, you've stolen some mouthpieces?
Yeah. Maybe not a lot, but a few.
I know I told Kathy I wouldn't ask about mouthpieces, but how many mouthpieces do you think you have?
Well, I can tell you this. When I moved out of one house I was living in one of the canyons there in LA, had a beautiful house, and we moved to the country from there. And I had so many mouthpieces that I had, like, you know, those bags you put leaves in,
Yes.
uh, probably 500 mouthpieces. And I filled that bag up and put it out, and the trash man took it away, which is what I intended. I said, I can't keep up with all that. And that's the second time in my life I'd done that. So, you know, but I find myself, the one mouthpiece I still have is the one Bach fixed up for me. And it's what I try to make everything be as much like as possible. Very kind of a thin rim,
Mhm.
and not to, you know, you really have to hold on to it. And I don't play as big a hole. I've you know, I can get just as much sound with a 27 hole or 26 as
Yeah.
I can at 25 or 24.
Now, and I'm sure a lot of people are wondering too, how much are you playing these days?
Well, every day.
Yeah. What kind of stuff are you working on these days? Since you're home all the time, playing a lot of etudes or?
I spend a lot of time doing embouchure studies, analyzing where I'm putting it, what I want to do. And I'm glad I did. I keep my eyes and ears open, and somewhere I got information coming into my skull that said, you used to play a third upper and 2/3 lower, and you did pretty good with that.
Yeah.
Now you're playing half and half, and you spend half your time screwing around till you get the spot. And the minute I moved it back down, it was like, hello, how nice to see you again. And I play, it's like a 5C,
Yeah.
on that order.
Yeah. And what music are you practicing right now?
Excuse me.
All right.
Well, I'm doing a lot of extensive warm. Here's Kathy. She could, maybe you want to come in here and tell them what
I
kind of
tell
thing.
them you don't practice music. I never hear much music.
You hear that?
I hear that. I'm
I never heard music until the day before the gig. There was a lot of
a lot of
lip slurs and scales and arpeggios and that kind of thing.
you
I
know
thought so.
Yeah.
there, and this might be a good point to mention our sponsor, which if you don't have this book, I can be happy to send it to you, Doc.
Well, I'll tell you what, Kathy studied with
Mr. Chick.
Chickwitz,
Yes, I know.
and
We have the book.
we have the book.
Yeah.
Okay. So this whole conversation is sponsored by Studio259productions.com, since I'm half owner. So
Say what now?
I said this whole conversation is sponsored by Studio259productions.com, since I'm half of the company.
Oh,
And
okay.
the other half is Mike Chickless. So let's switch the conversation a little bit, because I know my parents are probably watching, and they want to hear about the Tonight Show. Like everybody's going to want to talk about. Can you talk about how, first, before the Tonight Show, how you became the studio musician at NBC? How did all that kind of transpire?
Well, I was doing a lot of club dates, and then maybe just very seldom a record date of some kind. But I was doing mostly like club dates and that kind of stuff, and studying with Benny Baker.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to be able to put that's where my concentration was. And phrase that question again, please.
Oh, I was wondering how you kind of got into the NBC studio musician.
Oh, okay. So I was listening to a lot of classical players, practically nothing else but, you know, and Bud and the guys up in in Boston and Tom out in LA and the guys in New York.
Yeah.
And it's still true. I still listen to them wherever I can. And it was the next logical step after studying for years with Benny.
Mhm.
And because he taught me how to play a lot of repertoire.
Mhm.
And I thought I was never going to need it. And when I started conducting pops orchestras, and I had to know about bowings, which I did from my father. I'll never forget one day, I was playing the trumpet, and I put the mouthpiece up, and it was like I just jammed it on there, and bam, started playing. And my dad said, "Stop." He said, "You know what you just did? You just dropped the bow on the strings. You don't do that." He said, look at what you did. Your hand is up here, bam, you drop the thing down and then you yanked on it." He said, "You can't make music like that." He said, "When you put that bow on the string, it has to be traveling." Wow, like that. And I'll never forget one day I was conducting, I think it was in Phoenix, and they were buddies of mine. So I said, "Hey guys, I hope you don't mind me making a comment here, but what I want, I don't gouge that note out. Bow traveling like that. Woo." And they looked at me differently then and ever after that.
That's always good advice, because I think a lot of trumpet teachers try to make analogies with bows and breathing and bow lengths, and that sounds like a lot of what Baker was talking to you about. And
Oh yeah, totally.
yeah.
I'll put it to you this way. Between Benny Baker and my father, I never had a single real trumpet lesson. Nothing. They never said, "Well, you got to work on your tonguing or your this or that." It's say, you got to learn how to have that bow traveling and how to connect phrases. And it was, they just talked music. They didn't talk
Trumpet.
the how hard it is to play the trumpet.
Well, that must have helped when you started doing more studio work, because you went to work with NBC in, I think, about 1949 or so.
Yeah.
How did that kind of happen, where you were working with them regularly? Because I want to see how that led into the Tonight Show.
Well, I was doing club dates in New York,
Mhm.
and whatever else would come my way. And then once in a while, they'd find out you could play a little classical, and you might wind up playing something with an organ in a church, or, not much, but a little something. And want to phrase that question.
Yeah, I was just asking. I'm starting to get about where you were, how you got into the NBC studio work that you did that led to the Tonight Show with Steve Allen.
I had an unretouched Polaroid photo of Toscanini sitting in the lap of a very heavyweight soprano. And what they were doing, I don't want to tell you. That's how I did it.
Okay. That got you in with NBC?
No.
That sounds like blackmail.
I did the thing I'd been playing in the big bands. I came in, I was studying with Benny. Any kind of a gig I could get, I'm trying to raise uh, a wife and 2 or 3 kids. And I found out one thing, that I didn't want to play too many club dates the rest of my life. And yet there were guys that spent their whole life doing that and loved it, but it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
But I gradually, somebody heard me play some classical, and somebody was short a trumpet or something. And I said, well, you know what? Call Doc. He can do it. Really? Well, okay, get Doc to come on down. And that, you know, I studied repertoire, and I started playing with little orchestras around. Like I went out and played with the Scranton, Pennsylvania orchestra with Skitch Henderson for several years. And we played a lot of real classical stuff. And we gave it our best shot, I'll say that. And and then I started getting calls in the studios, like that thing that Ray and
Bernie
I
Glow.
were doing with
Bernie Glow.
Bernie. Yeah.
So can you talk a little about, because you mentioned Skitch Henderson, and he was the band leader for the Steve Allen show called Tonight. Do you remember what that was like when that started? Because that was really the first late night TV show, right?
Yeah, it was. Steve Allen had taken over the show, and now it's going to go network. And he liked trumpet. And he could only play in the key of F. But he couldn't read music, but he had a knack for writing nice songs. So he wrote his own theme song. And it was the closing theme of The Tonight Show, was a trumpet solo.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be rather challenging after you're sitting there for 2.5 hours playing all kinds of other stuff. All of a sudden, this very lush trumpet solo. And Skitch and I had gotten to know each other, and he called me to come do the show. And I said, "Oh, Skitch, I don't want to do it. It's late at night, and I'm doing a lot of record dates and things." And he said, "Now, Carl," he says, "I want you to come and be my first trumpet player. And trust me, you won't be sorry." Well, after a few weeks, we're there, and he's going out. It's a Friday night, and he had his overcoat over his shoulders, and he stopped at the door. "Oh, Carl," he said, I won't be here Monday. You take over the band." And he was out through the door, and I couldn't catch him before I got on the elevator. Well, I didn't know where he was. So Monday I was there, and I started doing the things because he told me, he said, "I want to go out and conduct symphony orchestras. And I don't really want to do the studio stuff." And so make yourself, be handy. When I need to go, I don't want to have to worry about it. So by then I was getting to be one of the characters that they went to for trying to get a line out of me, or, I was being seen on the camera.
Yeah.
And that's how it really started.
Well, now, you know this clip that's on YouTube of you and Charlie Shavers and Bobby Hackett and Steve Allen playing that quartet. Can you talk about that clip and how that happened? Do you remember how that happened?
Well, Steve Allen had this thing where he'd fall in love with an instrument, couldn't read a note of music, played only in the key of F on the piano. And he said, and he would walk around the studio playing like a kid in the third grade, you know, and 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 he had this awful embouchure. And I thought, oh God. And so sure enough, he wanted to do something with him and the others that you mentioned.
Right.
And you'll notice he was playing first.
That's right.
Yeah, that was wrong, but it was right. So, and that's that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you guys were on with Steve Allen for a few years, and then Jack Parr came along. Now, did the same band stay in with Jack Parr's show, or did you guys all leave?
No, it was different. But I didn't. I knew that I could have been in that band, but I didn't want to.
Right. Right.
As I had a lot of record dates that I was missing, and I want to tell you how my career as a recording artist for other people ended. In 1 week, I was working 7 days from 10 in the morning, and the last date started at 10 at night, 10, 2, and 7. And it was the guy, Jerry Mulligan,
Mhm.
and his band. The valve trombonist, you know.
I'll think of it later.
Bob Brookmeyer.
Oh yeah, Bob Brookmeyer.
Bob Brookmeyer. And I forgot who the other one was. Oh, I know. It was Gary McFarland. I played all the first trumpet on all the dates, 7 days in a row. Some of the most gorgeous charts you ever heard in your life. And when I got through with that, I'll never forget, I was sitting in that studio downtown and I said, am I really gonna go back in a studio and play cigarette commercials after this? I don't think so. And I had all but stopped taking any any dates for recording, unless I was going to do something on myself, or you know, I'd rather go out and do a club date and play some real music, or
Right.
you know, whatever. But that was the end of it. I said, it ain't going to get any better than this. What am I going to do? Try to, you know, imagine playing all day with those three great arrangers, the charts that we had, 3 record dates a day, one after the other. Bam. I said, that's it. No more Chesterfield cigarette commercials for me. No way. This is it.
And that's what you were doing while Parr was on the TV show. Those kind of
What's
dates.
that?
Were those the kind of dates you were doing when Jack Parr was doing the show?
I guess yeah, I sure wasn't with Jack Parr.
Yeah.
Anyway, I started going out and doing things on the road.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it a lot more, and I was playing more music, and I started being a playing emissary for a musical instrument company. And I'm telling you, I remember once in the month of May, I played every night how many days are in May? 130?
31, yeah.
31. I played 30 dates in a row in a different town every day with a high school band, with the jazz band, the concert band, and then go out afterwards and romance the people that I had to romance to, to sell the programs.
Right.
And at the end of that, I said, I can't do this anymore. This is too much. So I just limited what I was doing, and charging more money.
Well, can you talk about 1962 when Johnny Carson takes over the Tonight Show from Jack Paar, and then does Skitch and the band come back at that point? Is that sort of what happened, or how did that all transpire when Johnny Carson took over the Tonight Show for you to come back with the band?
Well, see, Johnny had been there.
Right.
And then, well, all I know is that I was doing concerts with Johnny. Yeah. I was going out doing concerts with Johnny, doing high school dates, college dates, record dates, whatever. And the guy who was producing the concerts was Stan Irwin. And he said, "Hey, Doc, I need to talk to you." He says, "Listen, Johnny is, he's not happy with the way the band is in the show. He'd been doing it for a year."
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "It's just not working out at all. It's a mess. And he wants you to come in and clean it up." He said, "They're doing all kinds of games and things with publishing and the publishing companies, and it's more about publishing than it is the music. And he's had it. It's up to here." He says, "He wants you to come in and straighten it out. Are you interested?" I said, "Yes."
Now, this is what you're talking about right now is the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and when you took over the band. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I went back because before that, when Skitch was the band leader, if he wasn't there, I was there.
Right.
Now,
Right.
Skitch was gone and I was gone. So he was, and Johnny took me aside and he said, "There's all kinds of funny stuff happening here. I don't want any more of this crap with the publishing and playing the wrong tunes because you own a piece of the tune or anything like that. Come in and fix it up, will you?"
Yeah.
And he said, and so I changed a lot of personnel.
Yeah.
And eventually it turned out to be 100% turnover, which made me very unpopular with some people. And
but speaking of personnel, though, I wanted to ask you about some of the Tonight Show personnel that were really important. Probably starting with Snooky Young. If you can talk about how Snooky got in the band and what an important guy he was.
yeah. Well, he wasn't there till I said, "You need a trumpet player. You need a real trumpet player. Get Snooky Young."
Yeah.
And anyway, so I had Snooky and I had Clark and I had Jimmy Maxwell and myself. That was the trumpet section.
Not bad.
Yeah. That was really, really good.
Now, when did Tommy Newsom come in the band?
He was already there.
He was already there.
Yeah, and I had to go someplace to do a date or something I just couldn't get out of.
Yeah.
And I told I had told Tommy when I took over the band, I said, now Moose, don't go away. You stay back, you stay there on that alto chair. And he said, alto? I play tenor. I said, not anymore. I want you to get a wide open lay and use a plastic tenor reed on it and put it on that alto and sound like Charlie Barnett or Johnny Hodges. He says, really? I said, yes. And when I can't be there, I want you to take over the band. Well, I didn't tell the people that were hiring me at NBC about this, but sure enough, something came up that I had to be gone. And they said, well, who's going to take over the band? I said, Tommy Newsom. They said, not on your life. I said, look, I'm telling you, this guy is, you're going to be glad I did this. No, just listen to me. I'm the band leader and I'm the one that decides who's going to be in front of the band if it's not me. And if I'm wrong, bury me. And of course, Tommy was a hit.
Yeah.
And
that was, yeah, I mean, and for people that are a little younger than I am, you should go to YouTube and find clips of Doc and the band, and then the times when Tommy would take over and his dry humor, which was excellent.
well, whoever was going to take over had to have his own personality, his own style, and I knew what was needed.
Yeah.
And the guy, and I'll never forget, that producer said, "Oh, not on your life." I said, "Uh-huh. He's going to take over and you will not be sorry." And he said, "Oh," like that. And of course, Tommy did a great job.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you about a few things on the Tonight Show. Can you talk about the two shows where Johnny asked you how high you could play?
No, Johnny came back from a commercial, and Johnny had this card in his hand. He said, "Hey, Doc, I got a card from this woman that wants to know, can Doc Severinsen hit a double high C anytime he wants? Can you?" I said, "Well, yes." And the minute I said, this is a setup for something. I don't know what the hell it is. But then I realized what I had said. This, oh my God. So I got to go through with it. Well, I'd been practicing high notes good enough. I never was a guy looking for double high C's, although I could play one if I had to. I hoped.
Yeah.
So I'm going up the scale, up the arpeggios, and I'm headed up to the double high C, and I'm thinking, holy shit, I got to have a finish for this. It's not the high C that counts, what comes after it. So I go up and I hit the high C, the horn goes down, and I'm like this, and I got all stiff, and I fell down on the floor in a dead faint. And the minute I said yes, I thought, you schmuck, what are you doing? You don't know if you could hit a double high C or not. I said, well, I sure hope so. I think I even crossed myself.
I think I remember seeing that in that clip. Yeah. You asked Johnny, you said, do you have any idea what you're doing to me?
Yeah, that was my thing. I said, did you have any idea what you're asking me? He says, well, can you? And I said, well, yes. And I think, oh shit, now what?
And
Well,
I want to ask in those situations, because those were very spontaneous events. Did you ever think about how many people were watching? Or did it just become kind of natural?
Well, it was natural enough because we had a family,
Yeah.
we were on 5 nights a week. We're together all day long, rehearsal and show. And everybody knows everybody else's style and character and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's just part of the day's work.
Yeah.
I hoped.
Well, there was another thing I wanted to ask you about, a couple Tonight Show band questions. When did Stump the Band start?
It was before I became the leader. And I think they were filming in LA. I wasn't even there.
Because the show went from New York to LA like in the early 70s, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. What was it again?
About Stump the Band.
Yeah, to Stump the Man. Oh, well, if Johnny ran out of material or show or guests, he would go up in the audience and talk to people.
Right.
And he didn't know what he was going to do. They said, Johnny, just go up in the audience, do something, just do anything. We need a slug out of you up there. We're running short. So his idea was Stump the Band.
Right.
And it became, really very popular with the folks.
It was very popular. And those were really funny because you guys were making up tunes, right?
Right on the spot.
For people
or you had, okay, whoever you were, if you held up your hand like that, that meant you had something.
Yeah.
So everybody had some little bit.
Right. And so do you have does that trigger anything in your memory of anything that was particularly funny or interesting about any of those Stump the Band things that stood out? Because you guys had some codes, right? Like you would say key of E or something like that. And
well, I had you were very observant. I had a thing where I'd sing country and Western songs, and they're always in the key of E, because that's it.
Right.
And so I'd go into the country thing.
Were there any? Can you talk about some of the guests that Johnny had on that were the musical and the non-musical? Did you have any favorites or anything that comes to mind right away that you'd want to tell people about? Like, who was your favorite musical guest? I should ask that maybe.
It's been a long time.
Well, you had Clark Terry on a couple times. I know that.
Who?
Well, obviously Clark Terry was a favorite because when you had Clark Terry play with the band a couple times as a soloist, that was always fun.
Oh, he was in the band.
Yeah, right. What about people like Johnny Mathis or people like that would come on the show? Do you remember working with him?
Oh, yeah, we had all kinds of wonderful people, and for the most part, they were all very, very cooperative and nice to deal with.
Yeah.
The bigger the star, the more cooperative they were.
Yeah.
And I can't think of anything right offhand. Excuse me.
That's bless you. I know I'm asking you to remember a whole lot of stuff that happened a little longer back than yesterday. What about some of the non-musical guests, like Don Rickles and Sammy Davis Jr.? When those guys would come on the show, Rickles seemed like he just kind of took over.
Well, yeah. that was their thing.
Yeah.
You know, they had some stylistic thing that they'd worked on, and when they came out, bam, they had to hit it hard. And
Like when you was there ever when you would see a schedule, and was there somebody who you saw on the schedule that you were like, oh, I really like, can't wait to see this person again because there's funny or interesting person that kind of reoccurred?
well, I know this sounds like a trite answer, but everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, Johnny could take some old woman who was strictly tone deaf from some small town in Iowa and get a half an hour out of her. You know, and he just had a knack. That's why Stump the Band turned out to be so great, because he could go up in that audience and he'd see somebody and say, "Oh man, I gotta get that guy."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there were some pretty frequent guests. I mean, he had Bob Hope come on a lot, and you would see Sinatra and people like that come on.
Well, Sinatra hardly ever,
Yeah.
uh, and he never, in spite of what people think, he never sang.
Right.
Um, but he did show up a few times, I think. Uh, and he didn't want it to be about his singing, you know, that and if he came out and sang a song, well, that's it.
Right.
So it wasn't like he was insulting us, but we had you know, somebody would come on that you would just never think, why are they even there? And all of a sudden they're transformed and doing this wild thing, and they become regulars. Like you know, I wish I could. I'm trying to think of this one guy. Nobody ever heard of him. He was just friends with a lot of other comics, and he was a screwball. Uh, and he would, when he showed up, it's, you know, when everything else was missing, you say, call so and so. I don't give a shit if he's busy or not. Call him, and they'd be in the studio before the show was over.
Wow. What and how did it work when you sort of became the co-host of the show when Ed wasn't there, or when Johnny wasn't there, right? You would
Yeah.
kind of fill in as the MC some nights.
Well, I just filled in for Ed.
Yeah.
You know, well, I'll never forget. Rudy Tellez was the producer at the time, and he came up to me, and again, I think it was on a Friday night. He said, "Oh, hey, um, Ed McMahon isn't going to be here on Monday, so you fill in for Ed, and Tom will come over and take care of the band, right?"
Yeah.
And I said, "What?" I said, "I'm not an announcer. Listen to this voice." And Ed was, you know, had a perfect voice and attitude, and I the first time I had to do it, I'm so embarrassed. I thought, oh God. And then I just stuck with it and figured, well, you better get something going because you're not going to get anybody else. So
And what and kind of going back to a trumpet issue, what was your schedule like once the show was solid and that was what you were doing? What was your playing schedule like on like a typical day?
well, it's always been the same.
Yeah.
If I had something to do that I had like the Tonight Show,
Hmm.
I practice early in the morning, late at night, or in between. You know, when the rest of the show is taking a break for dinner, I'm underneath the stairwell practicing. And
Wow.
especially if I was getting ready to go out and do something that I had, you
Right.
know, I couldn't frump my way through it.
Right. Yeah, you were on the spot for sure. All
Yeah.
those nights. And and uh and of course a lot of times you would go off, like you said, Tommy would take over and you were playing a lot with different orchestras and doing some recording. How did your association with Eric Kunzel and Cincinnati Pops happen?
Well, I was still, I think it was, I was doing the Tonight Show.
Mhm.
Eric, I don't know how I happened to be there, but he found out that I was on the Tonight Show, and he said, "Boy, oh boy, this I'm gonna have this guy." And so I would go in and play for Eric. Well, every now and then, it got to be more often, and I got to see what he did and how he did it,
Yep.
and other people the same thing.
Yeah.
But
Because some of those recordings you did with the Cincinnati Pops are absolutely masterpieces. The Trumpet Spectacular really sticks out in my mind.
yeah, well, that was Eric.
Yeah.
He's and he wouldn't take no for an answer. Here's what I'm gonna do. You're gonna do this. You're gonna do that. I said, Eric, what are you talking about? He says, shut up. Just get there and do it. And it was
Well, for anybody that doesn't know that recording, that's something that every
yeah,
Trumpet fan has to know.
I was very proud of that work. And Eric gave me some great chances. He he get me I was doing my little pops here and there in Phoenix and Buffalo and here and there, and I got a lot of information from Eric on how to do this, that, and the other thing.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you one thing I had to do though when I first started doing that. A pop show was just partly pops.
Yeah.
And I remember going to the, I forgot who the conductor was down in Phoenix at that time, from Spain. Teo Alcantara. Thank you, darling. And he said, listen to me. I want to talk to you. I said, yes. Could you clean up the accent a little bit there? And he laughed, and he says, "No, I am being serious now." Okay, what is it? He says, I think you could be the pops director here." And I said, "What? I came one time. I played these same charts in every town. I say the same things. I do the same thing. And that's it." And he says, "Oh, no, 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 no." He said, "If you can do it once, you can do it many times." So he said, "I'll help you. Anything you want to do. In the classical music, you want to play where you have to play some classical music, you bring the score to me. We'll talk about it, and I'll show you how to do it." And that's exactly what happened. And boy, did he ever have good information. I mean, it's been years now, and it's hard, but I could give you examples where he taught me, oh, the yeah, what is that? It's a
Oh,
four.
yeah. Yes. anybody that's listening, it's all on the tip of our tongue right now. Or maybe Marie's looking at me.
It's Malambo from Ginastera.
Oh, who's this guy?
Jose!
Hey, Doc. How are you?
I'm fine. What was it?
Malambo. Danza final a Malambo from Ginastera.
Ginastera.
Yes, sir.
What's the name of the piece?
Danza final
Estancia.
in Malambo. Estancia, yes. Estancia.
And it's the last piece. And I'm going to and was at an outdoor concert up in up outside of Phoenix, up in the mountain or someplace. And I hadn't had time to really look into it because I had certain things that I knew how to do, but I didn't know how to do that for sure. And he comes up to me after rehearsal. He was at the rehearsal. He said, "Listen, come, I want to talk to you." Very good accent, huh?
Very good accent.
He says, "You know, in the final movement, you must go crazy. You must get crazy. Go crazy. Not boom, boom." And he said, boom, boom. He said, "That's how I want you to do it." I said, "Well, okay, if it means that much to you, I'll do it." and all the guys I worked with and for were like that. They wanted me to do good, and they, instead of I was honest with them. I said, "Look, my knowledge of conducting is pretty limited." And then I started thinking, one time I was conducting something and it was a string section, and I heard exactly what Benny Baker and my father would have said, how do you want this bowed? And I was able to tell him, no, nice, have that bow traveling, just a whisper. And I was able to talk to him in the language that meant something to them. And a few instances like that came up where I managed to, and I never took it for granted when I was doing those little classical pieces. I would get great recordings of them, mostly by Chicago. And the Wagner piece, the piece from the middle, it's a big trumpet deal. And I got the Chicago recording with Bud Herseth. I could get up in the middle of the night and conduct it or play it, either one. And the first rehearsal, we get it, and we're getting ready to take a break. And I said, "I just want to try this one movement," and I'm doing it, and cut the band off when we were through. And the string player came by, says, "I see you have the Chicago recording with Herseth on it." I said, "You got it. You got it."
Well, I think, Doc, one of the things that all of us, there's obviously so many trumpet players watching this, but one of the things that's so unique about you and that's such a total musician is all the albums you put out. You had big band albums that you put out. The Torchlight songs is my favorite. I have so many of those that I meant to bring in here out of my recording room. And then you were also great at recording pop tunes and classical tunes and even fusion things. And it just always seemed like you were doing new stuff all the time. And I think all of us that are trumpet players are just so grateful to you for that.
Well, that's very nice of you to say, but let's be honest about it. If I hadn't been on the Tonight Show, no record company would have ever asked me to do those things. But they asked me, and I thought, well, if I have to do it, I guess I better look into it and find out what the hell's going on.
Well,
And I never, if I get up on that podium and I don't know exactly what I want to do and how I want to do it, the guys in the orchestra are going to know it, and they're going to be fed up with me.
right.
So I got to get it right.
Well, I mean, and I think that, and to be honest, since you were talking about, because you're on the Tonight Show, I think all of us are glad you were on the Tonight Show, because for 30 years with Johnny Carson, there was a live big band on television every night. I mean, there must be thousands of people that joined their music education and band programs because of you.
Well, I think you're probably right about that. It wasn't because of me.
Well, we'll argue
I'll
about
tell you what it was. NBC, when they decided to kind of work on that show a little bit, and we'll call it the Tonight Show, and we'll have a band, and they wanted to have 8 pieces or 7 pieces or something like that. And Skitch was there. He said, no, we're going to have 15 pieces. What? He says, you heard me. If you want me there to be the band leader, I'm going to have, and he named off the thing. He said, I got my guys, and that's the way it is. And so once that became a fact, then there was no turning around and having a smaller band, at least on the Tonight Show.
Yeah. Well, and kind of going along that same theme. I mean, you were such a big person in education. Like you said, you went out and did a lot of clinics. You worked with a lot of high school. I have 2 LPs of you playing with the Plano, Texas high school band.
Oh yeah.
And 2 different live Carnival of Venices that'll make people want to quit playing the trumpet if they hear it. So,
Me, myself included.
oh no, those are fantastic recordings. And I mean, I know it's been a little bit since you've done a clinic, but if you could just give a couple of ideas in your mind about, number one, the importance of music education in the schools, and number 2, what would be some things that you'd want to see changed with that? Where do you think the priorities should be for people?
The parents. Get a whole new set of parents. The kids are not the problem. It's the parents that are a problem. And and change the attitude in schools, where if you want to play in the school band, be prepared to practice and be really good. And if you don't, you're out. You're not going to sit there and take up space.
Yeah.
And, that could be done. It could have been. That's the way it was.
Yeah.
And you had band leaders in schools that would have his kids listening to the Tonight Show to hear what that band sounded like.
Yeah.
And if there was any other things that would help them musically, he made sure they listened. No more. They don't do that.
Exactly. It's I think anybody that was able to hear you on TV, we are all grateful that we did, because that made you curious, all those times and that you're on TV and playing. And I mean, I would stay up late at night watching just for the commercial breaks, and I think everybody on this chat's grateful. And I know it's getting late, and I've asked you a bunch of questions.
No, I want to get back on this subject here.
Go ahead.
About that, because there was a time when I became the leader of the Tonight Show band,
Yep.
that the guys in the band just thought, it's just another gig. And so they weren't too serious. They play good, you know, but they didn't have any concept that people really cared. And I sat them down, all 16 or 17 of them, and I said, guys, when you hear what I got to say, some of you will probably not want to be here anymore. But this is not going to be a studio band anymore. You know, you're good enough to do the studio stuff. It's not that. But there is the Duke Ellington band, there's a Count Basie band, there's a Harry James band, there's a this band, that band, and there's the Tonight Show band. And we're going to go on the road. We're going to make records, and we're going to have a name of our own and our own identity. And I think Johnny saw that was happening. So it was no longer, oh, have the sax player play with the piano player. We're running short time. No, get out such and such a tune. And I said, by God, you better have every tune ready, because you're going to have rehearsals. There's going to be blood on the floor, yours and mine. And from now on, this is not a studio gig anymore. And if you think it is, pack up and get the hell out while you can. Because, and it was exactly what I said. And they looked at me like, what? I said, you got it. I said, I'm trying to sell you to the American public as like as close as we can get to Count Basie, Duke Ellington, and the other big bands, a lot of big bands, that we're not a painting anymore of 14 guys sitting there like this all night. We're going to practice. And if we go 6 months and don't play a tune for the public, that's too bad. We're still going to keep right on practicing. And if Johnny says, hey, we're running a little short. God, Doc, can you guys play a tune? Yeah. And we'd have a tune, bam, right into it. And so that, along with the fact that the guys, I had a lot of great characters there. When we play Stump the Band and that kind of stuff, people got to know them, who they were. And they were a part of the show. And that's exactly, I figured if I can do that and nothing else, that'll be a good thing. And the guys understood what I was getting after, and one or two didn't, and they weren't there anymore.
Yeah.
And everybody in that band was a character.
Well, and Johnny would point those characters out on TV. He knew everybody by name.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's not a show like that now where the host calls out a win player the same way that would have happened on the Tonight Show with you.
You're right. I don't watch television at that time of night.
Yeah.
But
But I think it's a shame, because I think a lot of people that wound up playing knew who the trombone players were, the saxophone players were, the trumpet section was in the Tonight Show band, and they were just, like you said, they were part of the show. But I think it helped things. There's not any.
We're sitting here talking. I'm talking I, me. You're asking me questions, and the most important person in my life is sitting here in this room.
Kathy,
get over here, sweetheart. This is the best friend I ever had in my whole life. and I love her madly, and she is a marvelous trumpet player. And
Hi, Jose. Hi, Vince. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Kathy.
Hi.
There are a couple
Good to see
people that
you.
are going to pop in here and see you, Doc, by the way. And Kathy, but before I do that, Kathy, I think I speak for everybody here. You know, we're grateful that you're with Doc. You know,
Aw,
Amen.
oh,
that's
you're
very sweet.
I'm
Absolutely.
grateful.
There's
hey,
Vince.
look who that is.
Hey, Vince.
Hey, Vinny, I hate to wake you up.
I've been awake. I've been awake for the whole thing.
Wow.
I didn't miss I didn't miss a lick.
Are you watching us on the radio?
No, I'm watching on my phone.
See,
See, I'm sitting in my chair
Yeah.
and I'm just hanging out. Kathy, thank you for everything.
Thank you for everything.
I don't do anything except practice anymore.
Wow.
that's what it is for all of us.
Yeah, it's great.
Pandemic is the worst thing I've ever
I'm working
seen.
on my embouchure too. It's been a lot better.
Every day. You know, they were talking about what am I practicing? I'm trying to get the corners good and tight and the middle loose and
Pencil.
be able to play the trumpet.
Doc, you got a couple people that are going to come in here and say hello to you. Couple special guests.
Wow. It's
Hi,
Ingrid.
Doc, Ingrid Jensen.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, everybody. It's so
Hi,
wonderful to
Ingrid.
be here and be a
Hi,
fly.
Ingrid.
Ingrid.
Yeah, Ingrid.
Hey, Doc.
Kisses and health.
How's
Doc, you're a class act.
Oh, Marie. I love you, Marie.
I love you too, whoever that was.
Vince.
Vince,
Hey, Vincenzo. Hey, Vincenzo.
You
Oh
know,
my
we're
God.
talking about when I played with the Cincinnati Orchestra. I think you were there from the very beginning.
Oh, she was.
Yeah, sure. I got the job in '64. Yeah, I was there from the beginning.
And
I remember the first time you stepped on stage with us. Do you remember
Did I?
what you said to the audience?
no. Would you care
Well-
to?
Is it repeat?
You turned to the audience and you said that this was the your favorite orchestra to play with because it was the only place in the country where you could kiss the first trumpet player.
Hey,
man.
Manny,
It was a classic.
I got news for
That's
you.
the best.
That was true until I met Manny.
Oh, gosh. Now, listen, Doc, since you go around doing all these accents, I get to tell a story where I do you. So, Doc would come here every year for something called Jingle Bells, Doc, a great holiday thing that we would always do. And so I'm on my way, a couple of weeks before this show is going to happen. I'm on my way to work and I get a phone call in the car and, hey, Manny, it's Doc. And I, hey, Doc, how are you? Well, I'm fine. And we chat a little bit. I want to ask you a favor. And so what, anything I can do? I says, I want you to write me a fanfare, something to go between the last piece and right into Hallelujah chorus. And I said, well, I said, you want me to write it? Yes. I said, well, Doc, I've never done anything like that before. Then there was this pause, and he says, last time I heard that was in the back of a 1938 Buick. I think her name was Gloria. So I write
Oh
the
my
fanfare,
God.
and I present him with the score, and I hold it up to him, and of course, the name of the fanfare is Gloria. I've never seen this man laugh so hard in my entire life. As he did when you were literally doubled over with laughter.
Oh, boy. Oh, God.
Doc, you got a lot of.
Oh, yes.
Mark,
Yes.
thank you so much for doing
Yeah,
this.
Mark.
You cannot
Oh,
believe.
Oh, no, you guys
why-
don't go anywhere yet now.
all these people that this is just amazing. Manny, hi Manny, hi
Hey,
Dale,
Alan, how
hi
are you?
everybody. This
Great
is
to see you.
just remarkable.
Marie, while you're up
Thank
here,
you,
I
Paul.
want to show this. I want to show a picture to Doc. I don't know if you can you guys see me right now or not?
Higher.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
could.
Higher. Higher.
Now I can't.
Can you
Hold
see
up
this
a bit
picture?
higher.
Hide your face.
There you
Hey,
go.
Hide your
That's
face.
the first time I've heard that. That's Marie playing with Duke Ellington, Doc. Have you seen this picture before?
Wow.
Oh, that's Marie playing with
That's
Wow.
amazing.
All right, now Marie, now that I know I'm making you tell this story twice, but since you have all these people watching, it should be heard again. Can you tell the
Oh, well, it was one of the first crossover concerts featuring a jazz giant with a symphony orchestra. And it was, again, Eric Kunzel's idea to bring Duke Ellington. And it was the concert was in 1965 or 1966. And we had played the first half, intermission. We were well into the second half of the program. And the Duke was talking to the audience about what a great time he'd had during his week with us, and congratulated Eric and the orchestra, and complimented the support of the patrons of the orchestra. And then he went on to say something like, by the way, I hear that there's someone in the trumpet section that likes to play jazz. And then he goes, Marie, would you like to come and play a tune with us? And it was like, oh, well, yeah. And guys next to me are going, are you going to do it? Are you going to do it? It's like, sure, it's Duke. I'm going to go do it. So I walked up to the front of the stage and we just chatted for a little bit, and we decided to fake a blues, and we did that, and we played Body and Soul, and then we played another blues, an up-tempo blues. And at the time, it was such an event. The Associated Press was sending out information about this concert of orchestra, major orchestra, and a jazz giant. And somewhere along the line, the reporter refused to believe that it was a woman that Duke had called up to play with him. And so the name came out as Mario Speziali.
Oh, man.
So
Hey,
that's not the end of the story yet. So about 2 weeks after the concert, I was in the hall, and the orchestra photographer was there. He came up to me and said, Marie, he said, I was so glad that I was at the Duke Ellington concert. He said, what did it feel like to be called up? He said, did anybody clue you? I said, no, Eric just sprung this on me. This was a surprise that Eric cooked up. And so it was a great experience. He says, well, I was so glad I had my camera and have a shot of it. And it was like, you have a picture of this? And so that's the background on that picture.
wow.
Yeah.
And
What a great story.
What did it feel like to play that?
Oh my God. It's just, talk about being blessed. I mean, I
No,
couldn't believe,
but-
as
but
I was
you know,
going
see
through
what-
it, I couldn't believe that it was happening. And then rewinding the tape since, it was like an unbelievable experience. Joe Benjamin was on bass.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember the name of, I'm having a senior moment here. I can't remember the name of the drummer, but it was Duke, Joe Benjamin, and the drummer. I don't know if you knew any of the Duke's drummers. Maybe you could, if you came up with some names, I might be able to remember it.
Offhand, no, but I will say this, there's
Agree.
nobody I'd rather see do that than you.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Well,
Yeah.
it was once in a lifetime experience that I have cherished.
Oh, my
Oh,
God.
look who's there.
Oh.
Matter of
Look
fact,
what the cat dragged in.
Somebody open the
Oh, my
door
God.
and let him in.
Doc, a couple people wanted to say hi to you. So I thought I would let you know who I called, and then I'll go back the other way so you guys can chat a little bit. Obviously, Marie, Steve Wright, Tony Prisk, Gail Williams, who sat right in front of your bell in the Summit Brass recording session.
Gail Williams.
Gail Williams.
Oh, Gail, yeah.
There she is.
Yeah.
There she is.
Oh, there's
Gail.
Gail. Hey.
Polly, I believe you know.
Did you get your hearing back, Gail?
What's up? Yes, I fell for
What
that.
did you say?
Obviously,
It was a pleasure that I will always remember. We were playing it at 9,200 feet.
Oh, boy.
It was Bazooti's piece that we recorded. But what I really remember was the concert that we played the night before in Red Rocks Theater. Do you
Yeah.
remember what happened?
No, tell me.
It was a very windy night, and your music went from your music stand right straight across the whole stage at Red Rocks Theater. And you became the greatest comedian on stage, and you said, well, two things. Now you know I read music, and this is a very long piece. And then you picked out somebody in the audience, and you picked on this kid, and you made him come up and turn your pages.
Wow.
You kept picking on him the whole night. It was great.
It's good to see you.
It's nice to see you too.
Yeah.
Last time I saw you was in Jackson, just a few years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
We got to stop getting together like this.
Hey Doc, it's Jens Lindemann here. I'm sorry I sound a little late, but I had to find my finest shirt for you. I dressed up for the occasion.
That's it?
Let me tell
Oh
you
my God.
something. It was a waste of time.
Which of course leads me to the first time I ever got to see you live, 13 years old, Edmonton, Alberta, with the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra. You walked on stage wearing pink leather pants and a lime green jacket.
Yep.
You walked to the microphone. You hadn't even said or played a thing. And you walked up and you said, ladies and gentlemen, I don't wear these pants because I look good in them. I like them because of the way they feel. And I was hooked.
I think
Anyway,
that's
I'm doing
the
my
town in
best.
Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's great to see all of you. Doc, especially, of course, we love you so much respect for everything you continue to do and have done. And seeing all of these other great friends and colleagues online, this is a really special moment for me. So thanks for letting me chime in even just for a few minutes. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, Jens, thanks
Well,
for.
it's good to see you.
See you, Jens.
I call you all the time and you don't call back.
Excellent.
Oh, look.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Is that Mike's?
Michael Sachs, yeah.
Hey,
Michael?
Doc, how are you?
Well, pretty good.
Hey, you look great, man. Yeah, I just wanted to chime in as well. Just listen, man, it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyways. You know, staying up at night, waiting for the band to come raging out of a commercial was just one of the greatest highlights for me as a kid. And inspiring doesn't even begin to say what you've been for me for so long in so many ways. And something I don't tell too many people, but I'm glad to be able to tell you personally is that
thank
anytime I'm down or I'm like bumming out about my playing or something like that, I will go on YouTube and I'll go to your thing from the Jack Jones show doing MacArthur Park from 1977. And I'll listen to that, and that will immediately snap me out of it, and I want to go practice because your playing on that is just beyond the scale, man. It's just always inspiring and joyful for me, and it's just like everything. The reason why we do this, man.
It's
Amen,
just,
Thank
Michael.
you.
it's just self-preservation is all it is. I'm
I hear
trying
you.
not to be embarrassed.
Oh man, that's just it's spectacular. But thank you for everything you've been and everything you are, man.
Okay, are you still, you played the 6C, right?
I did at one point. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you sent me, I play a 1.5. You sent me a bunch of, Manny mentioned this in the chat that, you know, you talk about the mouthpieces, man, you were so generous. I told you I played a 1C, and about a week after I saw you, all of a sudden this package shows up with 8 1.5Cs in it. And you're just like, what do I need these for here? And I still use one of them on my B flat trumpet every day.
Well, you know, it's the weirdest thing now. They should never let 2 trumpet players or 3 or 4 be talking about mouthpieces. The other day, I found a 2C, and I said, "Oh, you're into Blind, huh?"
Yeah.
Okay, so I picked that thing up, and I said, "Oh, this will be big." You know, I put it up and it was just right. It felt pretty good. But
There went that one.
Listen, man, lots of love, Doc. And to you too, Kat.
oh,
Thank
And-
you.
it's great. And deliver my regards to your harp playing friend.
I most
Right.
certainly will. She's downstairs.
Yeah.
Will be very, very appreciative. She'll send her
Oh,
love right
wow.
back. Thank you.
Great to see you.
Hey,
Yeah,
Doc,
Doc.
Dude,
Yeah,
everyone
yeah.
else too, man.
Yeah, Mike.
got a few.
I'm gonna chime in here if I can.
Please do, Steve.
Say, Doc, you know, we first met back in 1964. You worked with our high school band that my dad directed, if you remember, Maury Wright.
Yes.
Yeah, and he somehow finagled a lesson with you for me. We went down to the basement of a music store, and what did we work on but Charlie A2? She also told me that I needed to change my embouchure, but that's a whole nother story. But you ended up playing twice with my dad's high school band.
Yes, of course.
And we did
And he had a very good band too.
Oh yeah, he loved having you there, and I have a couple of the pieces you played with him up on YouTube now. So,
Wow.
that was great. And then of course working with Manny, we had some interesting times doing the Christmas shows. But
Oh, of course we did.
should I tell him about the little thing you did, Manny, that was underneath the bass player's stool, the remote control flatulence machine?
Wow.
Great, Doc. It's great to see you. And
I can't even fathom that anybody would do a thing like that.
Manny would, and I had thought better of him
Oh my
before
gosh.
that. You know, so lots of fun here.
Thanks,
Oh man.
Steve. I'm so glad you got on because I knew you guys knew each other well, and I'm glad to see that. And
And is your brother still up in Canada?
No, he's actually the reverse. He's down in Arizona, and you remember you played once with the Las Cruces Symphony, and he was playing in that orchestra at that time. So yeah, no, he's doing fine. And
Well, he was playing up in Winnipeg or someplace.
that's somebody else. That's my other brother that I don't know about, I guess. But
Said you were his brother.
well, and you had a session with my nephew, David's son, Ben.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that's great. It's a lot of fun. Good to see some faces here that I would see at ITG, I would imagine, but we're not doing
Well,
this
there isn't
now,
going to
are
be
we?
one this year
There wasn't one.
Yeah.
or
We
last
don't
year,
know about
whatever.
next year.
Yeah. So great to see everybody.
thanks so
You
much.
too, Steve.
Hey, Doc, I want to bring up Ingrid Jensen here. Ingrid, do you see?
I was just typing in the chat that I have to go soon because my daughter is online doing her Zoom school in the morning. So I got to get her to bed before we all get screened out. But it's such a thrill to be here. And Doc, you look better than ever. I was writing in the chat.
Mhm.
Thank you for the wonderful stories. Super inspired. I'm actually
Oh.
running the MSM Jazz Arts department right now. And so this feeds my soul.
Well, how nice of
Absolutely.
you to be here.
It's an honor. Thank you. Thank you, Mark, for inviting me.
Oh,
Beautiful
absolutely.
job, too.
I think you
Absolutely.
know this lady here.
Not
Yeah.
sure. Do we know each other?
Yeah, you played it at Miami ITG, and we talked a little bit there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That was a blur and a fun time
Yeah.
all in one. It's great to see you. Thank you. Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks so much, Ingrid. And Polly, are you there? Thank you, Ingrid.
Well,
Yep, I sure am.
Hey there.
Only a fan of 50 plus years, but Doc, remember when you played at Ravinia and your music was lost
Yes.
and you performed the concert anyways?
Yeah, that was
It
a
was a fabulous
wild
memory.
thing.
You said, and then the band would do this, da 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 da, and then I play.
Yeah, boy,
Oh, it's
I'll
terrific.
never forget I went to warm up in the afternoon, and I was walking around the stage, and I just looked on the music stand, and none of my music was there. And I said, that's strange. And I play a little more, and I went to another stand, and none of my music was there. And it turned out that they didn't send any of my music. A new publisher got a hold of the stuff, didn't send anything. So I came out and I made everything up.
Yep. And it was
I
fabulous.
recall that. Yeah. I was so angry that I said, nobody should be this angry. So I said, well, make the best of it. And that was that. Yeah. You're looking good.
Doc, you're looking
Thank
good.
you.
Mark,
Molly?
this has been the best October surprise ever.
Oh, no.
Yes, indeed.
I'm just so happy to do this. And Doc, I mean, I'm just going to kind of keep calling some folks out here because, and Marie, while you're talking, I'd love for you and Vince to talk a little bit, because for people watching this, they should really go to YouTube and find the recordings of you playing the Harry James tribute with the Cincinnati Pops.
Ooh,
So you can hear Vince and Marie and Doc play.
Yeah.
I might chime in.
Please, that's what I want. Go for it, Vince.
First of all, thanks to Marie for saving my ass a million times in the orchestra. We had a pact. Anything she didn't want to play, I would play. And there was a lot of things that I wouldn't play, and she would play for me, like the end of Chichester Psalms or the end of West Side Story or anything soft. I would say, Marie, you have to help me. And she would go, of course. We had a wonderful time. And, that's the great thing about musicians and trumpet players in particular, brass players, to see you all with Manny and everybody, Mike and Doc, of course. I mean, I remember something that Doc said one day. I said, well, Doc, I said, he says, well, we were talking about something about mouthpieces. And he goes, yeah, there's nothing greater than the doorbell ringing, and it's the mouthpiece, man. I'll never forget that. That was the funniest thing I ever heard. I said, oh my God. I said, I just can't believe he said that. He did, though.
Package from Peter Pickett.
Oh no, this was way before that.
Oh, before that?
This is way before that.
Mouthpiece
And
man.
it was great. And you should have seen his eyes. His eyes were like, the mouthpiece, man. It was like Wonderland. It was great. But, I think the great thing is that, it's great to have role models. And Doc mentioned Billy Butterfield. He was one of my very favorite records that I had, one of my first records. I sold all my Jens records, but didn't get very much for them either. But listening to those records over and over again, hearing people play, hearing Manny and Doc doing the Paulus Concerto was inspiring, because I had to play it after that, and I'm going, man, this thing isn't easy. This thing is, but wow, I heard them play it, and I'm going to play this piece. It's inspiration that we get from recordings and from live performances and being around people that are great musicians and great people. And Doc, you've done it for most of us, so thank you.
No, I'm just lucky to be with you. That's all.
Yeah, we've been riding on your shoulders for a long time, Doc. We've been riding on your shoulders for a long, long time, buddy.
Yeah, and I ain't through, and I don't think you are.
No.
There isn't anybody in this crowd that's through. Right?
As long as they still paying, we're still playing.
Hey, Doc,
That's why I'm not playing.
Well, that's a problem for us freelancers.
Hey, Doc, I think Tony Prisk wants to show people a picture. That's Tony from playing a couple times with him.
Doc, I don't know if you remember, we played together a couple times in the Houston Symphony. I'm now in Philadelphia, but I wanted you to know that after what Vince said, I wanted to tell you that my most memorable practice session of my life was after hearing you play live for the first time. It was at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, and we took this picture.
That's good.
Just after that concert, and after that concert, I just went and played for like, I don't know, maybe a couple hours. I was so inspired, and your sound just blew my mind. And I wanted you to know that you've inspired me. Even from high school, I was listening to all of your Tonight Show band and even watching you live on TV. And it was
Don't blame it on me. Don't blame it on me. You're just another trumpet player trying to find the blame to put it someplace. Look at all those horns you got lined up there.
Well, thanks for being my.
Yeah.
Blame you.
One of those mouthpieces would fit me.
Hey, I just have a question for everybody.
Yes.
I wonder if anybody else has the same experience that I did. I was never able to play the F to G trill to my satisfaction until I heard the recording of Doc playing the opening cadenza to Granada. Da dee da 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 da. And it was the first time I said, holy crap, this guy can somehow manage to play what is supposed to be the hardest trill to play, and with no problem whatsoever. And I have been using that recording as an example to my students of how to play that difficult trill at least for the last 35, 40 years. No joke. I mean, what I want you to understand is that those moments that you had just kind of recording and having fun and doing what was going on, the ramifications of those things are probably a lot further than you think. And I'll give you one final example. Also on that group of command recordings where you recorded Bluesette, this is the recording that I play over and over and over for my students because I want them, and it's not for the technical line other, although that's still, I don't even understand that, but just for la, da, 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 just what I tell them, I said, this is an example of relentless air. And I said, there is absolutely nothing that gets in the way between his brain, his lips, and the air going through the horn and then the resulting sound. So I just want you to, in case you haven't thought about that, thank you, that's it. In case you haven't thought about that, the things that you did that were, like I say, just kind of fun for you, you worked hard, of course, to do it, but ultimately there were a lot of fun for you to create, have had tremendous teaching ramifications for a lot of us, and you really need to know that.
Well, you know, funny thing that you are talking about a trill, because today I was just fiddling around with the horn, and I was going to play a trill, and as I was taking my breath, I stopped about 3/4 of the way through taking my breath. And I said, no, you're not through breathing yet. Fill up. So I filled that last thing in, and I said, I got to talk to some trumpet player about this, that we quit breathing too goddamn soon. Don't stop till you're full. You know, really, that's true. You've always got that leftover part between your neck and your halfway down your body that's just hanging around with all this extra air in it.
Well, I got some time around 10 o'clock on Thursday if you want to come on.
Touche, Manny, touche.
Hey, Manny, by the
Is
way,
that open for any of us?
I'm sorry, Marie. Manny, that recording you were talking about is this, can you
Yeah.
guys see this?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
one of my favorites.
Old command recordings were just sensational.
I got a question for Doc.
Yeah.
Fire away.
When you did that bluesette recording, was the second part written out, or did you make that up?
Made it up. He made it
Mhm.
I
up.
just listened to it a week ago.
That's the sickest thing, is that he made it up on the spot.
We can't have that.
I don't know. I'll go with Manny on that.
That's what you told me.
Yeah, I bet he did. I bet he did.
Told me.
Well, there's a recording of Doc with some high school band of him playing Clark Study 2, I think it is. And there's a piece that he played in every key. It goes through the whole thing. It's just amazing. It's on YouTube somewhere. And I just heard it the other day, and it's, And also, I put up a video the other day of the Love Lock with the Boston Pops. It was a little better. It was a little better quality recording than the original one that was on there. And it's remarkable. All of that stuff is just, and also it's groundbreaking. It's bringing us to a new place always, and that, look what it's done for young people. I just think about some of the students now. The reason that they're better, well, because a lot of you and Doc, because of what you've done, the examples you've all been, and I think that's one of the things, and Doc was talking about, trumpet lessons. I think the best trumpet lessons are the ones that we hear. They're the ones we hear and the ones that we emotionally experience, and if you don't get emotional when you hear Doc play those command records or anything like that, there's another one that most people don't have. It's called Gold on Silk. And it's an old recording, and it features a horn, a trumpet, and I think a trombone, but I can't remember. And then Doc plays one of Ray Wright's tunes, and it starts out, it goes, da 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 da. That's like up a high G to high F. It's just frightening. And it's a beautiful little thing with strings, and then he comes in and plays, and it's something that stays in your mind and body. And we call on those things.
God, I don't have that recording, and I wish I did.
I'll send it to you. I got it. I'll send it to you right after we finish this. I have it.
I've moved so many times.
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering who has those recordings.
Oh, you know how many I have, Doc. I've got them all.
No, but I mean, ones I just left, and I wonder what happened to them. Well, okay, I'm glad you got it.
Yep.
And I want to thank Vinny. I want to thank you so much for talking the other day. We went over some of these things, and it was an encyclopedia of Doc's career, and there was no way to get to even half of what we talked about the other day. I really don't think people can understand just how many things you've recorded. It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing.
Yeah.
I wonder why that was. I don't know. Well,
and responsible for having many, many pieces commissioned and performed, bringing the literature up, to a new place and broadening it out. It's just amazing. The Stephen Paulus pieces, the Fisher Tull, Ben Cresciuto, John Barnes Chance. There's Claude Smith. Plus popularizing a lot of pieces.
Frank Proto.
Frank, right?
God.
Let's look at the Frank Proto piece.
Yeah, is Frank still with us?
Solar Wind.
Hey
what
guys,
did you say?
Can you see this?
Yeah.
Oh, that's Benny.
Benny.
That's our new baby. He's called. His name is Benny.
Oh, boy, that's great.
Benny.
Benny.
Well, Doc, I'm going to have to go because I'm not as young as you. I'm just going to.
And
Oh,
Doc,
well, we still got a few people left here.
Yeah.
well, and Doc, I wanted to show a picture of Vinny. I'm sorry, I wanted to show a picture real quick, if I could.
Yeah.
Can you see that?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, there it is.
That's you and me.
That's that terrible jacket.
It's a terrible jacket, and it was in Jacksonville, Florida, in like 2000. And I came into your dressing room and I said, "I'd like to take a picture." You said, "Sure." I said, "Can I wear one of your coats?" And that one kind of fit. So that was a picture I wanted to let you see. But that was just
Mark,
yes.
Mark, that's as dorky as those outfits Phil Collins and Steve Pride went and picked out.
It's pretty bad, I'm
story.
telling you that.
It's clear
But you managed to look pretty good at it.
Marie, tell that story so people will know what you're talking about. That's a
Well,
good.
Doc should tell. Doc, do you remember that story when we were doing the Buglers Holiday and Phil Collins and Steve Pride played second and third to you, and I think it was a second piece after the intermission. We were out at Riverbend, and sometime between the dress rehearsal and the concert, these two guys went to some costume place and rented these outfits that were about as dorky as you could find. And it was a surprise to you and Eric. And Eric introduced Mr. Collins and Mr. Pride to join Doc to play the Buglers Holiday, and out come Phil and Steve front of the stage, and they look like idiots. You were sputtering. None of you could get started. I think you had to make three attempts at starting the Buglers Holiday. And Eric's head was on his stand. He was shaking his head and laughing. The orchestra was laughing. The audience was laughing.
Well, we had a lot of great times with that bunch.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. Mark, do you have that picture? That picture that I gave you might be the night that those two guys showed up with the dorky outfits.
I'm gonna have to send that because it was on the picture was a little rough. But I will send that. I'll send that.
It was your 75th birthday, Doc, out at Riverbend. We celebrated your birthday.
And how old?
75 years young.
Oh, wow.
And that's also the night that you played MacArthur Park. I don't know if Mike Sachs is still on, but I had the same feeling that Mike had when you played that out at Riverbend. Our whole section, we were just like, oh, dear God, listen to this. This is amazing. It was like one of those special moments.
Well, I've got to pay attention to that and get that piece out. But then where am I going to play it? With the Maryville, Tennessee Philharmonic?
Doc, I want you to know that in Marie's studio, from what I remember, there were only two pictures that had trumpet players. And there was a picture of the trumpet section, and there was a picture of you. And that was it.
Wow. Okay, let that be a lesson to all of you.
Doc, it's Jens here. Peter Pickett sent me a photograph of the two of us with sunglasses on. You looked way cooler than I did, but it's massive. I mean, the thing has to be a good solid 8 feet long and like 6 feet. It's as big as you can print. And I got it in a tube in the mail a couple of days ago, and then I went and had it framed. And I told my wife Jennifer, I said, I want to put this in the bedroom, and she said, no way. But I got you on my wall, and you're larger than life, as you should be. It's a fantastic photo.
Is that the one I put a mask on you, Jens? Is that the one where I put the mask on?
Timeout chair. Vince puts me in a timeout chair every time I go over to his house. He claims that I talk too much.
Not you, Jens.
Really?
I'm quiet as a church mouse tonight.
That's not.
Listen, I am in awe. I am in awe just to be on this. Marie, so good to see you.
Marie.
I mean, all these wonderful faces.
Yeah,
What
all
a
of you.
crazy, crazy time. I know, but what a crazy time we live in right now. And what a joy that in spite of the fact that we have this horrible crisis, we're all together like this. Were it not for this stupid COVID crisis, we never would have had this kind of a visit all together. So I'm always looking for the silver lining.
There are
things,
so
and
many
I'm just delighted to
blessings.
be here.
There are many blessings right
That's
now.
right.
If you look, if you
Yes,
stay
there are.
positive and look on the bright side, there are many blessings right now. We've got to think that way. We just have to if we're going to survive.
And don't forget to vote.
Yeah.
Yes.
I did it.
Already done. You know, already done.
So I want to say something, Doc.
Uh-oh.
Hey, it's not gonna be that bad, Vince. Okay.
I'm still here.
Are you speaking English? Hey, Jose, are
try-
you speaking English?
I'm trying to, but I'm gonna tell you a story. First of all, I want to say hi to everybody and pay honors to every great person that is here. And those of you who I don't know, I hope I get to meet you soon. Doc, you always been an inspiration. I'll never forget the first time I met you. I met you through Jens, and we were talking, and Jens like, "You don't know Doc?" I was like, "No, I don't know Doc." "Oh, come on, let's go." So we went, and you were warming up in some stairs somewhere.
I was what?
Warming up somewhere in some stairs. And then I got there, and we started talking Mathis right away. He's like, "Oh, I have a band." At that time, I think you were coming back from Mexico. "I have a band in Mexico, blah, blah, blah." We started talking, and then we started talking Mathis right away. And I was in shock. I couldn't believe I was talking to you. So I owe Jens the generosity that to have met you. But the story that I have to tell you is that when I was teaching, so I was trying to get here as fast as I could. And I got pulled over. And I got a ticket tonight.
Are you blaming it on me?
No. I said to the cop, "Well, I'm late because I'm gonna. There's this hand with Doc Severinsen on Zoom." And he said, "The Doc Severinsen, the trumpet player," and the cop says to me, and I said to the cop, "Yeah, Doc Severinsen, the trumpet player." So I'm like, he's gonna let me go, So he says to me, "Oh, well, tell Mr. Severinsen we send our regards. Here's your ticket." True story. I wish that was a joke.
Oh, jeez.
Anyway, good to see you, everybody.
Yeah.
I lost my picture.
Your picture?
Yeah, we're not seeing anything.
I'm just seeing Zoom.
Oh, we can still see you.
Yeah, so watch what you do because we can still see you.
Go in that little square
There we are.
side.
Say, if I can chime in for a second. Hey, Doc.
Hey.
How are you doing, man?
Chops, man.
So I have to second Jose. The first tour that we did back in 2012 with the big band. You and I sat down for dinner after the sound check, and you sat right across from me, and you said, "All right, what do you do with your embouchure? How do you set up? What are you doing there? What do what? So what do you got? What do you got going on?" And I said, "Well, what am I going to say? There's hardly anything for me to say." So I just said, "Well, I'm kind of working on this thing. Manny's got me working on this deal, and then, blah, blah, blah." And so you said, "Oh, yeah. That's right. Because, the north, south, east, west corners, whatever." And I had this sort of like, pinch me. I'm talking shop with Doc Severinsen.
Yeah.
You can't be serious that I'm actually, because, like so many people say, I usually watch the Tonight Show only to catch the out to commercial and back from commercial stuff when the band would be playing. The rare time that the band would actually be featured, I'd just be like, yes. I was probably 13 when I saw you live for the first time at Orchestra Hall here in Minneapolis. and it was, you know, truly a thrill. So to actually spend all that time on the road with you and do all the stuff that we did, I just couldn't imagine anything cooler for, you know, my
Boy,
any
I sure
time.
wish we could do it again.
Oh, yes. Get the band back together. Let's play. You know, it's been 4 years since that band played. We did.
Yeah, well, who's keeping track?
Yeah, I would never know that it was November of 2016.
And you're talking about the embouchure, the Catholic.
Yes.
That's what Manny taught me that.
That's actually true. This happened in a conversation that we had, and I told Doc, too many people spend time thinking about, you know, just top and bottom, and they forget about the sides. And you got this look on your face like I just revealed something biblical to you. And every time you'd see me after that, you'd always say, "Hey, Manny, I'm still working on that Catholic embouchure of yours."
Well, you know, you got to keep your ears open, because you never know when you're going to get a tidbit like that can make your life better.
It's what I tell all my students.
You told me that it had
pay
added
attention.
10 years. He said it added 10 years to your career. I want to know when the 10 years starts.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet, apparently.
Cool.
It's amazing. You know, somebody asked me there earlier about what do I do? I think about the Catholic embouchure. I think if a trumpet player is willing to take that embouchure apart and put it back together again often enough, it'll keep you going for a lot longer.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Right.
I really mean that.
Well, you've always been the lifelong learner, and I keep telling my students, tell anybody who asks me, you know, what was it like with Doc or whatever, I'll say, one of the things I'll take away from this the most is that you cannot stop searching and learning new things, and you can't stop being open to something new that might, like you said, change your life.
Well, you know the old saying, that trumpet, she is a jealous bitch.
That phrase has changed.
Oh. I mean, if you don't pay attention to that thing, she'll have you.
Yeah.
Doc, your work ethic is off the charts, unbelievable. What an inspiration. You know,
Well,
seriously.
Marie, if you could ever see my hometown, you know why I'm practicing it still. I don't want to go back there. The only other thing I'm any good at really is horses. And if I fall off now, I'm dead. You know, so.
Speaking about horses, I just told Kathy about the Pasafinos. You got to check out a Pasafino for Kathy.
No, you know what? I'm trying to get a hold of a guy out in Oregon. He has the most gorgeous
Mustangs.
Mustangs, yeah.
Yeah, she told me you're interested in the Mustang.
The Kiger Mustangs. Oh my God, they're beautiful.
Well, you can get a Mustang for you and a Pasafino for Kathy.
Okay. Tell you what, I got it figured. You pay for the Pasafino. It's your idea.
Oh, you can spring for a Pasafino.
Do you have a Pasofino?
No, I don't. But at my age, I'm like you. If I fell off of one of those things, that'd be the end of me. But if I were going to do it, Pasofino would be great.
You just get up, brush yourself off, and kick that horse in the belly and say, "Don't do that again," either. Boy, I'm so ready to get a nice horse.
Yeah, and Kathy said you're interested in a Mustang. So.
Oh yeah, and I know.
How many miles to the gallon do they get?
What? What'd you say?
What kind of mileage do they get, Doc?
Better than a Ford. If you don't mind cleaning up the horse shit.
Depends on who's riding it, right?
Oh my God. Oh man.
Oh, this conversation is starting to deteriorate. I better keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, but consider it a bunch of trumpet players. What do you expect?
Exactly.
Marie, please do not do that. Keep talking, please.
Hey, Jose.
Yes, sir.
Do you ever come down here from Nashville?
Now I will.
No, I'm not inviting you.
Oh, okay.
I wondered. I just wondered.
I love it.
Of course. I'll tell you what, we'll meet halfway. How's that?
That sounds
At the
great.
lake. Meet at the lake.
How do you like it up there?
I like it.
It's good, huh?
Yeah, I really like it.
Well, you got a hell of a conductor. That guy, I love him.
Giancarlo.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
He
John,
loves you. He loves you.
yes. Hey, Doc.
Be sure and
Doc. Doc, I was just going to tell you that Giancarlo was, when he was 15 years old, he and an orchestra from Costa Rica came to the Casals Festival in Puerto Rico, where Minnesota Orchestra was playing. And then it was like 15 years later, he was in front of us auditioning to become assistant conductor.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, well, he loves you, Doc. And
Well,
remember
I love him
Miami?
right back, I'll tell you. And I can only imagine that what his conducting is now. It's got to be really good.
He's something else. He's something else. I mean, Mike plays under him regularly. If Mike is still here, but I saw him conducting, and I have played with him, and you know, Mike can attest to that, but way better than I can. But
Yeah. Giancarlo's fabulous. I played a premiere of a concerto with him a few years back, and I mean, done so much stuff with him over the years in Miami here. And I mean, the first time he came in, Lauren Mizell was supposed to do his Ring Without Words, and Giancarlo got the call Monday morning that 24 hours later he needed to be in front of us doing this piece. He was on the floor with his kids. This was maybe 12 years ago or something. His kids were little. He came in 24 hours later and knocked it out like he'd done the arrangement. I mean, it was spectacular. And then we saw him a bunch for since then. So it's wonderful.
Yeah, and he's such a sweetheart of a guy too.
Yeah.
You know,
The best.
Yeah.
yeah, we had a great time in Miami. Remember, with Jens, you, him.
I'm pretty sure there was a cigar involved.
Right.
Cigars all over the place. Boy, I miss having a good cigar. I'm telling you, I bet there isn't a guy in the group here that doesn't smoke cigars. Right?
Doc, I had a Liga Privada just this afternoon and thought of you the entire time. And no, I didn't save any of it for you.
Not even a little tiny bit.
There's a little nub, and it's all wet and it's encased, and I'm going to send it to you in the mail. You're going to love it.
Oh,
Doc,
we got to do this in person.
Yeah, let's ITG 2021.
I'll be there.
If we're lucky, I hope.
I'm pretty sure this was ITG 2020 right now is what we just did.
Well, it could be.
Yeah.
It's not bad, is it? Not too bad.
Let's not start trying horns though.
Oh, come on.
Well, at least let's
Yeah,
not have that
mouthpiece.